All right, I'll try it again. I'm going to open the subcommittee work session on House Bill 1410. Thank you. And just want to talk a little bit about, how I'd like to go through this. There's, I think, 9 sections in this, and they're quite different things. And I'm not necessarily going to go through it in order. What I'd like to do is take care of some that I think are going to be pretty straightforward, and then we can talk about what we want to do with the rest. And so the subcommittee will probably end up recommending an amendment to the full committee, and it could do different things to different parts of the bill. So, is everybody fine with that? Yeah,
I just had a quick question.
sure.
I see sections that are struck out. So was this a bill that came last term and kind of came again?
No,
Or-
the sections that are struck out, they're striking out current statute,
Okay,
because this is changing current statute. It's not relative to some prior bill.
okay.
So-
And the other question I had was the numbering. You said 9 sections, so there's a
Yeah.
lot of delete realignment.
Um,
So I just want to kind of, if you can just go through which are the 9.
It's actually 10, sorry. Yeah, the Arabic numerals that are the most to the left. But I'll go through it and I'll tell you the page and line numbers.
That would be great.
as we
Thank
go,
you.
Because I have enough trouble following this. So what I'd like to deal with first is there's a number of things which I think are just doing things like we're done last session with moving certain functions from the boards to OPLC that weren't done for everything. Some things got missed. And so I'd like to deal with those first. And I think the first one in here is on page 2, starting at line 23, Nurse Practice Act Powers and Duties of the Board. And I'd like somebody from OPLC, we'll let other people come up if they want, but if you could come up, Doug, and, I'll try and explain what I think is going on and tell me how I'm wrong, which is like, and you can both, just introduce yourselves.
Good afternoon, Douglas Osterhout, General Counsel for OPLC. With me is Bethany Cottrell. She's the Division Director for Licensing and Board Administration.
Okay, thank you for being here. But again, we'll look at section 3, powers and duties of the board. And what I'm seeing is it's doing things like on line 28, moving, the actual exam, the licensing and renewal from the board to OPLC, as we did with many other things. Similarly, moving some of the disciplinary action out and getting rid of some of the stuff on having to maintain the records and all that stuff, and also dealing with fees. And so this runs through, this was section, so this runs through line 20 on page 3 is the part we're talking about. And, am I correct? Is it doing something more than just the same stuff we did last time?
No, it's the same thing. It just brings it in comports with 310 at this point, establishing those roles and responsibilities. But there's nothing here when I read through it that shouldn't be or that surprised me in any way.
Okay, does anybody on the subcommittee have any questions for them about that?
So this is currently existing. So OPLC has
Correct.
operates or functions or is responsible for these functions. Okay,
So-
sorry, I'm trying to get the
No,
right.
a little history.
Yeah.
Last year, we had this huge redo, and there's, I think, 57 boards. And in general, there were, each board did a lot of administrative functions themselves. The idea was to move a lot of those into OPLC, make it more efficient and organized and all that. And it wasn't done for everything. And this section is just doing part of that for the
Nursing.
nursing, yeah.
Thank you.
Any
That's
other
my-
questions here? Is there anybody else who'd like to speak on this section? Someone there? So, let her come up. If you could turn the mic on, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Susan Buxton. I'm the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman.
Yeah.
And I just had a couple of questions related to what you just said. When I look at this section, it appears to me, and maybe this is more a clarification, you're saying that it moves processes from the boards to OPLC, the authority,
Right.
correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
So when I look at, starting with line 23, it's amending 326B4, the powers and duties of the board to establish eligibility criteria for licensure and renewal of licensure, including examination requirements and continuing ed requirements. So
Yeah, that's.
what's currently in the Nurse Practice Act establishes those criteria in the Nurse Practice Act.
So Doug, if you could come up, please. Yeah, I was wondering about that one. Doesn't the language for other boards say something about like in consultation with the board or something like that?
Well, here the board would actually have the authority to establish these criteria. So basically, if you wanted that soundbite, it would be OPLC controls the process, but the board controls the criteria. So the board would establish the education requirements, those types of things, but the application would come into OPLC. We'd run the checklist. Did they meet the requirements established by the board?
So I think, as I understand it, there's the section that's struck out on line 28. So the actual issuing of the licenses and handling renewal is done by
the
OPLC.
office. Correct.
But this leaves the board with the authority to establish the criteria.
Right.
that-
And I
are you-
agree with that, but when I look at the, page,
Ah.
bear with me a minute. So page 6,
That's past the section we're talking about. But
Right.
we can look at it if you want, sure.
well, because it relates to it.
Yeah, sure.
So it removes,
What line?
so 29, 30, and 31, particularly 29 and 31, talk about the CEUs. It talks about those criteria. And it removes the LNA portion of CEU criteria.
Well, actually, what there is, if you look at section 1, which we're not dealing with at the moment, I want to take separately because I
Okay.
know it's controversial. That removes LNA licensing and just leaves it with the certification. And so as part of that, those would have to be removed. But I've got some notes here that some of those repeals are tied to the LNA thing. So let's say we chose not, to delete the LNA, dropping the LNA license, and some of these repeals would also go with it. And so I'd like to take those together, at least unless I'm missing something, which I may be.
I have a question
Certainly.
on that one.
Representative Manchaputi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It also refers to the National Council of State Boards of Nursing for LNA, criteria identified. So if this is deleted, how will that affect, there is no RSA tied to that,
I think that's not being,
touched?
so Doug, that language on lines 25 and 26 on page 2, I mean, I didn't go line by line with the RSA in this, but isn't that language that's currently in the RSA? So what they did is what OLS did when they drafted this is they took RSA 326-B:4 and they copied it, the whole thing, and then they made the changes in it. But the parts here that are not in bold, which are added and not struck through, are current statute. So that's not changing.
Okay.
Any other questions from the subcommittee? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and for those at the table, and for you.
Yeah.
what you said, I don't think is what I'm reading. The replacement language that's in 2, establish eligibility criteria for licensure and renewal, et cetera, that removes that from the nursing board.
No,
No?
no, I think what it does is it explicitly grants it
No, it
to-
does say powers of the board may, okay,
And because before, under what it used to be,
on 3.
sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, we can run it really formally, we can be a little, if there's not problems, we can be a little,
So that, you know, when you go to 30, line 30 and 31.
Yep.
It further says board should select an appropriate nationally approved licensing examination. So the board still controls the exam, licensing, renewal, all those things. But the actual process and issuing of
Okay, I
license
see the
Right.
difference. Yep.
would be opened up.
right. And if the parts that struck out on line 28 was before, the boards were responsible to actually, examine, license, and renew the license of the individuals. And that, the machinery of running through the process is an OPLC, but the board will still have the authority to establish the criteria.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Pat, can OPLC tell me, will this reduce, one of the biggest questions I get about is the time it takes now, the process. So by taking that process away from the nursing board, will that cut down, streamline the process on a timely basis?
Everybody's calling my name by. I'm going to ignore them for now. So the authority to process the licenses actually transferred to the office on July 1 of last year. So we've been doing that process, and Bethany might be able to answer it better, but from what I understand, it has sped up the process. And we heard testimony on some other bills yesterday that said it has sped up the process. So far, as far as I know, it's been a success.
Positive change?
Positive change.
Okay, great.
Yes, ma'am.
And if I could just, make sure I understand that basically, you've been operating as though this change had already occurred because we gave you the authority last year. I mean, is the board issuing, they're not issuing the licenses
No, we're
now.
doing that. OPLC's doing that.
So in effect, this is the way things are being done, and we're just straightening out statute.
So when we originally introduced 655, I think the bill was about 120
Yeah.
some pages long.
And Representative
yeah.
Grota did, an enormous amount of work trying.
So this would be some of the conflicting language that we're still addressing.
Okay, thank you. And if someone could answer Representative Mangiaputi's question about if you're done, you. No, I wanted it up on the
Yeah,
microphone.
I think my question probably
Okay.
comes later, to your point. Thank you.
Okay. And if someone could just answer the question about the improvement in timeliness.
Thank you. Bethany Cottrell again. So the way that the process is now working is that because the boards are able to set that eligibility criteria and then OPLC is doing the operations of that, instead of if an applicant sent in their application previous to this change, it would be reviewed and then sent to the board for review and then approved or denied at that board meeting. Now, based on these eligibility requirements and objective criteria, with the collaboration of the board, we're able to approve or deny those licenses prior to a board meeting happening. So it could be 3 days, it could be a week, it could be 14 days, but it does not have to wait for that board meeting unless there is a requirement for subject matter expertise. At that time, it would still go to the board.
Can I just ask?
Follow up,
Yeah,
sure.
so it's parallel processing. So while the OPLC is looking at the process of granting or renewal, board is looking at the requirement and,
They set those requirements prior to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but they will be reviewing what the applicant's status is with regard
Not
to
the
that,
application itself.
but requirement.
If there's an issue with the application, that would go before the board still, correct?
Thank you.
But I understand they set the requirements and then that's automatically works for for applicants unless there's some exception or
Correct.
issue.
So what, one more last?
Certainly.
Yeah. What is the time frame that we are talking? 14 days, 4 weeks?
It's really hard to set a number because it's based on when we receive a completed application. So it depends on if someone sends in all of those requirements or if they just send in pieces. So it's been very hard to quantify that. If their application is complete and they meet all of those requirements, it can be done within 3 business days. But it depends again on what that time frame is. But that is the goal of the executive director and our strategic plan within the next 2-ish years, is to make sure that we're around that time frame based on completed applications.
And I also want to point out that while we're typically well ahead of the timeframes, there are timeframes in RSA 541A 29 and 29A that sort of set parameters for us as well.
And Representative Brown, yeah?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the criteria that exist in number 1 and the eligibility criteria that's in the new number 2, are those different? So is the nursing board, now I'm going to ask another question before, follow up before I get an answer. Is the nursing board setting the criteria for what you need to become licensed?
Yes.
And is that not the eligibility criteria that's on line 29?
So if you're looking at line 25 and
Yep.
26, that's referencing the National Council of State
Yep.
Boards of Nursing. That is the national membership organization that sets best practice throughout the country. And so that section there is basically saying that the board will stay in collaboration with those national best practice standards. And then if you look at 2 about establishing the eligibility criteria, that is stating that the board will then set the administrative rules for those requirements for applications and licensure for nursing.
Got it. Thank you.
Just to clarify, the rulemaking authority starts on page 3, line 22, and line 24 specifically references eligibility requirements for initial temporary renewal of licenses.
Okay, yes? Representative Gould?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that I'm following from our previous work together. If I, and please correct me if I state this wrong, so that's my question. Do I understand this correctly? As I understand it, there was previously boards doing all this work. The Office of Licensing became established and slowly has responsibilities have moved. And there was a lot of discussion, a lot of turmoil across a lot of different boards about what parts of the work the board did should be transferred. And so what we're seeing here, the language is really clear, the board will. And this section we're talking about now is laying out what the board will still do. And the board still is exercising all of their technical knowledge to establish criteria. And I don't mean this in any demeaning way, but basically the Office of Professional Licensing is doing the clerical kind of tasks. And they can do it because they work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, in a more timely fashion than the board that has to figure out when everybody can get together and meet. And you have applicants that are piecemealing things in, which further complicate the timeline. But an office from 8 to 5 can handle those pieces better. Is that sort of what we're talking about?
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
And just also on the timeline thing, what we've heard testimony before from the executive director, that they're working on an IT solution where people will be able to submit their applications online, and that system will tell them whether or not they've included. So they're not going to submit a partial one. It'll tell them you need this, this, and this, and it won't actually go into OPLC or the boards or anybody until all the pieces are there. And instead of you send it in, and maybe, I don't know, following it days or weeks to get back, and oh, you're missing this piece. You do some round trips, and hopefully that'll be gone.
I mean,
that-
yeah,
they're
it
not
could
there yet.
add a frustration to you can't download, you don't know what you're missing, but that's,
Yeah.
that's
That's-
a technical challenge. But with regard to LNA, we are focusing on LNA
No.
tied into,
No,
right?
that's a separate, this is a General Nurse Practice Act. This is all the nurses. The
All the
LNA one
nurses.
is section 1, and I know there's issues with that. And,
Okay, sorry.
yeah, that's okay.
Okay. How,
Um,
one last question with the Board of Nursing, how often do they meet?
They currently meet monthly unless there's a need for emergency or special meetings.
Okay, that's my,
Doug, I have one further question, and that is related to section 3. Are any of the repeals in section 10 really specifically tied and necessary as part of section 3? You know, there's a number on 326B, but I think most of those probably are related to the LNA licensing. But I don't think there's any related to this section, but if you could check.
can see is the RSA 326B4. These are 19, 20, 20, 16, 19, and 21. There's totally 326-B colon 16, 326B colon 19. I didn't see any in the section we are addressing 2 and 3
Right.
relating to
I was
that.
hoping there wasn't a reference or that it was okay.
Thank you.
That we don't have to, we can treat them separately. That most of those are for the LNA. And I know there's some in that whole section for the radiation stuff and that registration and all that. But as long as, if we want to keep section 3 unchanged, you know, is there anything we also have to say in section 10 we need to leave unchanged? I guess is the question. You know,
I don't think so.
and
I
I'll
don't
probably
think
have
so
similar questions.
Yeah, yeah, I'm just looking over it real quick. I don't think so. is
Yeah,
my
I looked,
answer.
took a
I'll
look
do
through it,
another
and I didn't either,
check,
but I thought,
but-
you know, you're the expert, so
Yeah.
thought I'd ask. Okay. Does anyone else want to speak on this section, section 3? Okay.
So, thank you. My name is Samantha O'Neill, and I'm the chair of the Board of Nursing.
Welcome.
Thank you. There's one component that I just want to make sure as it relates to the process of application. So, the Board of Nursing has worked collaboratively with OPLC, where the board has set the criteria, and we've worked with OPLC to say, here are parameters in which to work from so we can make the process smoother and more efficient so you don't have to wait for a board meeting. But if there are applications such as like background checks that have issues, inappropriate conduct or so forth, if somebody has been disciplined in another state, those come before us to look at because those are outside of the parameters that the board has set for OPLC. So we work collaboratively together to make sure that that process is faster and efficient to get people their license quicker.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Representative Manjapudi and then Brown.
So thank you for taking my question. And when you say Board of Nursing, RN, LPN,
APRN,
APRN.
APRN, RN, LPN, LNA, and MNA,
Oh,
which is the medical nursing assistant.
okay. So you're responsible for all of them.
Correct.
Okay, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for taking my question. So I will translate that, if I might, into that you're okay with this wording of the new number 2,
3. Well,
section 3, number 2.
that's lines 28 through 30 on page 2. Sorry, section, well, it's
Okay.
Roman 2, it should be.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Section 3, Roman 2.
Yes.
Okay,
All right,
thanks.
great, thank you.
That's
And is-
easy. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that wants to speak on section 3? Okay, see, none. What I'd like to do, and we continue doing this as we go through, is take kind of an informal vote of the committee, and the question is, keep section 3 in the bill as is. And if you want some discussion, that's fine. And if not, I'll accept a motion. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll yield to you.
Representative Gould? if you-
Just, just the thing is like, as long as we are cutting down the process, making the process more clean, streamlined, and it's a collaborative effort. So there's collaboration. It's not on one shoulder, this one board's responsibility.
No, I mean, yeah, I think
That
they're working
is the
together
key.
well, and it's part of this whole, we're trying to do this for all the boards and,
Correct.
and there are pieces that were left out. And so it's kind of like we gave the authority to OPLC and we still left certain ones with the board and there's a conflict really.
Makes sense. Thank
And
you.
Representative Gould,
I move that we accept the changes in this bill from line 23 on page 2 through line
20,
20 on page 3.
okay, make sure, 23 to page turn.
Yep, that's correct. I'll second that.
Okay.
Doesn't the section 2, it has to start on page 1? No?
No, I mean, the page number's at the top.
Yeah, page 1, that's
I mean, there's the title page, which
title
doesn't
page with
count.
2.
This
line
is all of
6.
section 3
Yeah.
under the
Okay.
what the nursing board may do, and line 21 on page 3 starts with section 4, Nurse Practice Act, and that'll be a new section.
All
It
right.
is not part of what we just discussed.
Okay, so as I understand it, well, I know you tried to make a motion first.
Did you?
Fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh.
It doesn't matter. That's
I
yeah.
apologize. I
No,
didn't
no,
know you
no.
were making a motion. I thought it was a question.
I mean, you had the detailed one. So for this one, Representative Gould and Brown seconded it, I believe. And then
We all
everybody's agrees. Aye. Anyone
Aye.
opposed? Okay.
Unanimous.
5-0. Good start. Okay. So we're done with that section. I'd like to go on, I think the next one we do would be section 4, which gets into the rulemaking authority for the Nurse Practice Act. And Mr. Osterhaus, if you can come up.
Mr. Chair, so that is page 3, line
I'm sorry.
21?
Correct. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. So looking at this, and again, this is correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that I've seen this language on page 3, line 25 a lot, where it's moving the responsibilities. You know, some of these things might be the board, put a bunch of them OPLC. It just moves the language from by the board to under this chapter, so they're put wherever the chapter says they should go. And then on the next, and by the way, this thing, section 4 ends on page 4 at line 28. And the rest of this is keeping the language the same, except for the addition starting on page 4, line 24. And where it talks about 42 CFR, the federal regulations. And is that only related to the LNAs? Line 24 through 28 on page 4,
It does apply to the LNAs in the nursing registry.
but only the LNAs. Okay. So what I'd like to, again, are there any questions from anyone here about that?
Yes.
Representative Gould and Representative Brown then, yep? I mean, Manjapudi and then Brown.
So this federal regulation only applies for LNA, National Registry is for LNA, not for nursing?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
I
apologize.
said, I'm just curious. The national 42 CFR is only for LNA, not for nursing in general?
Yes, so that is a federal registry for licensed nursing assistants and MNAs, the MNAs. But it's the Registry of Nurse Aides is if you look up that CFR.
So to clarify, it's LNAs and MNAs. You need to be an LNA to become an MNA.
And one more follow-up.
Certainly.
Thank you. We don't have CNAs in New Hampshire, but this is a national. Are CNAs also in that?
Certified, you mean?
Certified nursing assistant, also part of that registry? If it's federal?
I think, well, yeah, somebody else can do. And there's section 1 of the bill deals with that to some extent, but, which we'll get to.
Go ahead.
Elizabeth Eaton, Board Counsel to the Board of Nursing. So the Federal Registry is for nurse aides. In New Hampshire, we call them licensed nursing assistants or medication nursing assistants. And MNA has to be an LNA. It only applies to nurse aides. Is there a second part to the question?
So in other parts of the country, CNA could be part of that.
CNA is what some other states call LNAs.
We happen to call them LNAs. So what, and let me ask one other question, Doug. If we were to eliminate section 1, not saying we will, but if we were to eliminate section 1 related to removing the licensing for LNAs, would it, should this part here, page 4, lines 24 to 28, should it remain or should it be removed?
I want to make a point that under the licensing definition for 541A and in RSA 310, the registry is still considered a license. So we're talking about removing the license for our LNAs.
But they'll still
But
be
if
called
there's a
LNAs.
registration, they are still technically licensed by
Okay.
the state, and that's an important distinction.
Right, I know there are
Okay.
people who are concerned about that at the public hearing, but just a technical question, if we were to get rid of the license for LNAs, which is in part 1, should this section on page 4 remain or not?
Yes, we would think that that would remain in order to meet the federal requirements and to maintain a registry.
Because they're still
here
going to
in
be
New Hampshire.
registered even if we don't have what's an official.
Right, and this would allow us to add the renewal ability for the registry and those other pieces that would go along with that.
Okay. Any other questions? Representative Brown, I'll take it first this time.
Thank you,
Then
Mr.
Mike,
Chair. To either one of you. So on line 24, the implementation of the nursing assistant registry. So I think from the first day of testimony, that means that New Hampshire will be picking up, managing that registry for our nurses that will be on it. We can access that registry, and that's what I understood from the first day, but that could be totally wrong.
Yeah.
Who? Go ahead.
So go ahead, if you want to clarify.
How
No,
does the
sorry.
whole process of the,
You need me to clarify? No.
the coordination between the federal and the state
Right,
registry? that
so
is-
we maintain that registry currently at OPLC, and so this would just
Okay.
continue that registration.
Okay, and follow up,
Yeah,
actually,
follow up.
different question. And there was some concern the first day of testimony about differences in requirements to meet the certification versus an LNA in New Hampshire.
I'd like
and
to
they would-
address the actual licensing part when we deal with section 1. If that's okay.
Okay, yeah.
And
So-
Representative Montepudi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So help me understand this. If we remove the LNA licensing provision, that will impact MNA because you have to be licensed nurse assistant. And in order for MNA who administer the medication, that is needed. So we cannot technically remove LNA licensing. Am I correct?
Go ahead. If you can answer, if you have an answer.
I
I mean,
So I think what we're trying to do if the state requires a registry under 541A, that's still a license. But the situation we're in right now is that an individual can pass those competency programs or evaluations, and then they get put on the registry. And then there's this potential gap because there's a separate process for becoming an LNA licensed in New Hampshire, which is that $35 in the application. So I think the
think
goal,
Maybe what we should do is move to section 1, and then we can come back to section 4, and that might make things easier. She's still got a question she's looking at an answer for, but why don't you address the whole, in context of her question, then we can,
so I think the goal here ultimately is to streamline the process. Once the individual passes that competency exam, the state is required by the CFRs to put that person on the registry within 30 days. So essentially that becomes initial licensure. There's no separate initial application and there's no other period and there's no $35 fee. But it's still, if we require an individual to practice to be on the registry, that would still be a license and we'd still be able to require CEs, 2-year renewal under RSA 310, those types of things. So what this does is it kind of streamlines the process in the first instance.
Clarification?
certainly.
Thank you. So that clarifies. So CF, the central registry is just a database where you get the pass. And so if I want to practice as an LNA, I should go to the next step, get the license. Then if I want to become an MNA, further get that,
Today.
right?
No.
That's when I have to
That's
pay
how it is
35.
now.
Yeah.
That's the process as it stands currently.
So what's removed in
So
this?
this process would be saying that if I went and took my course to become an LNA, that the state would have statutes and rules and regulations that set up a registry. So that way, when I pass my course, I get onto that registry, and based on the current statutes, that's considered a license here in New Hampshire, and then would allow us to set renewal requirements for the registry. You would not have to then do an additional initial application and pay a fee and then maintain both. Because right now, the way it is that an LNA has to maintain both a registry and the application. This would just be streamlining it to be a registration.
If I could ask a quick clarification for myself. So right now, let's talk about right now, the process of the federal registry or the federal, CFR that, and we have a registry set up now, and we require, if you want to be an LNA, the first thing you have to do is meet the requirements of that CFR and get in our registry. So is that whole part of it going to stay basically the same? So that's not changing.
It should stay the same, yes.
Okay, if we were to get rid of the license requirement. And so so they do that first, and then they apply for the state license as opposed to registration. And other than paying the fee, are there any other requirements?
I believe there's a criminal background check that's required under the current application that wouldn't be required because the CFR says once the individual receives their
Okay.
exam, whatever, they are automatically placed on the registry. So there is a
Well, she's
difference
still
in
got
that
a
piece.
thing on the floor.
Can I get clarification on the criminal background check?
We could be a little,
Okay.
if you're
Fine.
okay with that, yeah.
Are you saying that if we eliminate the second duplicative licensing process and we just go with the registry, we don't have a mechanism for a criminal background check? We do not, by eliminating this duplicative process?
Before I answer that question, I think there was an additional thing I was unaware of, if I could let board counsel.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, in addition to the background check, there's also in New Hampshire a higher level of educational requirements, including a higher level of clinical practice before you graduate and complete your program.
To be
Yeah,
my
and
question.
related to that, is there any difference in the scope of practice that you have today if you've got the registration and the license, or if we were to do this, just the registration?
That seems to be a point of contention. I would say no, because the state gets to set the Practice Act. but I think there might be people behind me who disagree with that answer.
No,
Okay.
from what I understand, sorry, Mr. Chair, I
Cer-
jumped in.
Yeah, we can be, as long as
40
it stays sort of in
hours
control.
in order, even if you practice, like if a high school student is doing the LNA track, health and they get 20 hours and they can do another 20 hours, total of 40 hours of training before they apply for license to practice as LNA in New Hampshire, correct? So is it the same as National Registry, or National Registry has a lesser hours?
The National Registry does have fewer hours required for both classroom and clinical experience. To answer your scope question, it really differs by state because state can regulate the scope of practice.
Certainly,
And
Representative
to
Brown.
clarify on that too,
Hang on a moment, just
the
a
state can also set the standards for training and competency.
Okay.
What is the path to
Microphone.
go right from the registry to MMA? You don't need the license, right?
When you were on the registry, you would be an LNA.
But how do you become the MNA?
There's a separate application for an MNA.
Right, but do you need the license which is proposed to go away?
I hope-
Problem solved.
Okay, all right,
Problems to solve.
Representative Brown.
Okay. Going back to the question I started asking before, and it's been made more confusing to me. So it sounds like what the person from the Board of Nursing said, there's more hours and more clinical as it now stands than the federal piece. If we go to this registry, do those requirements go away? Where are they managed?
So it would not be that they go away, but that's the section that we were talking about prior to going here. On page 4, line 26 to 28.
That's what I was going to ask back then.
Yeah,
That's
so
why I
that's the
skipped
part
it.
that we were saying would still stay in, that there would still be a requirement for the Board of Nursing to set requirements for a nurse aid training and competency evaluation program that would be pursuant to that. So that would be the place where you'd be able to set those requirements.
Okay.
So let me sort of follow up to that.
Thank you.
So if we pass section 1 and we got rid of the nurse license, would what's here on line 4, 24 to 28, let the New Hampshire Board and OPLC basically put in the same requirements on training and maybe scope of practice as we have today?
That's the way I read it, yes.
Does anyone disagree with that?
The only thing missing here that I can tell is the background check, and so they can do the competency, they can do the evaluation, all of that, but there's no implementation of a background check here.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Just to finish this, I mean, if we wanted to, is that true? There's no background check? And would there be any problem putting somewhere in here saying they had to have a background check?
We might have to add 2, right? Background check and renewal. So
Well,
once they get on the registry.
The renewal's here. Am I, sorry, I'll give you a little free form, but not too much. So first of all, let's do the background check one.
So right now there wouldn't be a requirement. The problem is if you have to automatically put an individual on the registry, when is the time for the background checks?
But let me follow up on that. If you're saying we can add additional training requirements, it would sound like we couldn't do that if you have to put them on the background check when they meet the federal requirements, or is that incorrect?
Thank you, Fed.
My understanding for how they go onto the registry is that they would have to pass a course that is approved by the Board of Nursing or pass the competencies that are approved by the Board of Nursing, and then they would be put onto the registry. And so then that would be their license. But because there isn't something, a time or an application in between, then the background check would not be able to be an additional requirement. It would have to be set prior to in those educational and competency requirements.
But can we do that if we don't have the license and we're just doing the registration?
My understanding is yes, based on how we approve what educational programs and competencies will allow them to be put on the registry. So it wouldn't be that,
Yeah, go on,
Correct.
please.
It wouldn't be that someone in Wyoming would finish their LNA and be put on the New Hampshire registry. So this is the New Hampshire registry that's based in federal requirements.
Okay, so one thing I want to bring up, and that is, I had a discussion with Representative Grota before, at the end, or I think it was yesterday, and I guess she has a bill which is to deal with nursing. I think there's some committed some study and maybe an actually bill to do things, and she was suggesting that we take the section 1 out and that she could deal with it in that. And the reason I told her we'd start looking at it and see what we thought, because it sounds like probably we're okay, but it sounds a little unclear. Because what the real overarching question is, can we get rid of the license and still have the LNAs that are certified only have at least similar training and scope of practice as today, and also somehow have a background check as today? So that's the question. Can we really be sure the answer to that is yes?
I think the background check comes at like the employer-employee level.
Right.
So
I mean,
when
I'd be okay with that. We'll see if other people are comfortable without the requirement, but
My couple of questions I have is, background check is to make sure the transitional nature of the communities now. I could be here today, I could move across the country, and that's an easy one. So the background check, and if there is no requirement to renew my license, or, who's keeping track of my continuing ed? Once I get the registry and I'm fine, where is the checks and balances we are asking them to take care of?
I think it needs to be clear that under 541A, if you're placed on the registry, that would be a license as long as we required that registry. So then we could make a renewal process with the CE requirements and all that and maintain those as we go. Every 2 years, it would need to be renewed.
So that would make it more solid in terms of what we are providing for care for our constituents who need this care, that we are overseeing the quality of care through, whether you call it licensing or renewal registry, but there should be an oversight by nursing board or OPLC.
That would still exist. Yes.
That will still
so again, just to reiterate it, if we were to leave section 1 in and the repeals that are in section 10 related to this, you could, and it'd be done through rulemaking, but you could have basically the same training requirements. You could require a background check. And I mean, if it's required for the registration, do the employers then do another one, or would there be some value to having one? And if you move in New Hampshire, you're covered. I don't know.
The process currently is if someone has to have a background check through OPLC to get their license,
Yeah.
then that stays with us. If they then need to have another one through their employer, they would have to do
That'd be
that
on them.
again. And so
And
in this,
would be the same if there was a registration and we added a requirement.
so you wouldn't be able to add to the registration, you would not be able to add a requirement of the background check because there would not be a time frame or an application for them to be able to do that. So I think that's what board counsel was also saying, and I believe there are people that might want to testify separate to that.
Sure.
So what we are saying is that it, in this field, tends to fall on the employer to do those background checks. So if we were to remove the license type and just have it be a registry, which under 541A is still considered a license, it would remove the initial requirement at licensure for background checks and place that requirement on the employer.
Would it actually place the requirement on the employer or the expectation?
The expectation.
I can tell you, as an employer of a home care, we used to spend hundreds of dollars on background check, physical, and they would, we had to pay for the training. Then they got 5 cents more someplace else. We couldn't go back. And I would say, ask us, we'll give you the background check. Don't spend another money. But they don't, because it's the onus on the employer. It's the burden on the.
So maybe you can answer this and other people. So today, because the LNAs are required to have the background check as part of the state license, do the employers not spend the money to do a background check of their own?
To get their license,
Yes.
it's the LNA's
I understand that.
responsibility. But if they want to get employed, then the employer
like-
has to do it again. That's on
Oh,
the employer.
so it is already being done by both, really? And so
Exactly.
it's duplicative, basically. Okay,
I think it depends on the employer.
okay. Yeah, Representative Brown.
Okay. Two questions for the nursing board folks. On page 4, the two new sections, 15 and 16, it was just said that that covers the difference between a registry now and the Board of Nursing requirements now. That those two sections allow us to have some more strict requirements than the registry. I haven't read through the CFR, but I don't read the English in those two lines as saying that.
It's everything except the background check. So the background check is our biggest concern.
Okay, all right, so everyone in the room is clear that 15 and 16 means the Board of Nursing can have some extra requirements on top of the registry. That's what I want to make sure. And there's a hush in the room, so we're good. Second question, and I apologize for being
That's
blunt. If we don't have a background check, are we saying that LNAs and if there's a person that has elder abuse, that we're okay giving them a license?
That's the problem, sir. So yesterday we had a Board of Nursing meeting. We had 4 hearings. All 4 hearings were based on background checks for LNAs. We approved 2, we denied 2. 81%, and this was in my testimony last week, 81% of LNA applications come before the board for criminal background concerns. And so we have specific criteria that we hold near and dear to make sure that the community is safe.
Yeah.
Employers, now my background, I'm the public member and the chair. So my background is human resources. I've been doing human resources for way longer than I would like to admit. And 9 years of it has been in healthcare. So I have industry experience. There are expectations that employers do background checks. But however, there's no consistent set criteria for each institution. So what one institution might feel is not eligible for employment, another one might say that there is. And so it really is either internal employer policy or just they need bodies so they're more lenient. But the Board of Nursing has strict criteria, what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And those that have questionable backgrounds, they're required to submit an explanation in front of the board. And then if the board wants additional information, we ask them to come before us in a show cause hearing so we can have a dialogue with them to understand what occurred and make determinations on whether or not we would issue a license or not based on those criteria.
Okay, and thank you. And that follow-up, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
That would become an after-the-fact process then if this happens. If there's no background check up front, and maybe I'd be interested to hear what anyone else has to say, whether they think that's necessary.
Now-
Can you be a carpenter, for example, if your background, whatever
We don't license.
whatever
carpenters.
industry you want to be in, can you do that industry if you have had XYZ problems with the criminal justice system? And so are we saying if you have been found guilty of elder abuse, can you be an LNA?
Right
in New
now,
Hampshire?
no, but without a background check, you possibly could.
Yes.
So
that's what I'm
for
getting at, yeah.
example, yesterday, one of the background checks was sexual assault of a minor that came before us. So that we have simple assault, we've had kidnapping, we've had drug possession. But yesterday, if we didn't do a background check, that individual who was arrested for sexual assault of a minor could work, and we would not know that.
Right.
And so there really needs to be some precautions and guardrails surrounding background checks for the employers, you
Right.
know, for the people that are looking for licenses.
So
You know,
just-
you put somebody in a
and-
long-term care facility, that's an issue.
And I think this was said, excuse me, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
follow
I
up,
think
yeah.
this was said, yes, in the testimony the first day, that once something has happened, it's too late to fix it. And so
Correct.
maybe we need to have this
So
background
just
check
to get a feel on this.
Thank you.
Sorry, the elder abuse is obvious, but what sort of things that, you know, the people might have a background issue that would be considered acceptable for, I mean, with simple like cannabis possession or something?
Right,
yeah.
something like that, yes. You know, it would, if somebody had criteria on DUI, for example, right? Or there's a difference between having a DUI versus being impaired at work. You know, was it drug possession? Was it impairment at work? Or was it, I was young and dumb and did something that I shouldn't have, and I've learned my lesson because it happened 10 years ago? But those are all things that come before us that we question and look at and review, which has the parameters for safety.
So I'd like to, if people are okay with it, cut this short and, okay. Representative Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question to you all is, with a license, is a licensed nurse's aide able to advertise and accept employment privately in homes with patients in New Hampshire? Is there
Yes.
anything in the law preventing someone, once they're issued a license, from hanging out a shingle and taking employment?
No, they could do that. But if they're,
And
if
they do it.
if they go through, so in that scenario, an individual hiring an LNA that would not, most likely not do a background check.
Correct.
But we would have that safety guard in the front end when they were obtaining a license to be able to clear them to work as an LNA.
You have that now, but if
Correct.
this goes through the
We
way
would
we're
not.
saying, it would not be there. And that's what this committee's not hearing, is
Correct.
that it's not all nice little agencies that we can hope are going to have the kind of criteria that will protect the elderly from theft, from their drugs being stolen and sold on the street, like OxyContin and the other highly addictive drugs, from their money being taken, from the other kinds of abuses that happen, from child molesters going into the home, because the public thinks, oh, the state's giving a license. This person must be safe. They're licensed,
So
correct?
I'd like,
Yes,
I
it's
can see where this is going.
Thank you.
Okay, all
from
right.
the nursing board, do they still have, the criminal background check is one with, you know, neglect and abuse reported, BEA,
The Bs,
yeah,
the Bureau of Elderly
Bureau of
Abuse,
Elderly
yes.
and
Yeah.
Affairs Registry.
Yes.
Do they still have that? How is nursing?
I might actually be able to answer that because I used to be Elderly and Adult Services General Counsel at HHS, and I actually did registry hearings. So if you look at in the CFR 483-156, part of the registry content is that as part of the registry, the state must provide any response to an inquiry that includes a finding of abuse, neglect, or misappropriation of property. Also included a statement disputing the finding, and then it down below in the CFR adds some more detail. Documentation of the state's investigation, nature of the allegation, date of the hearing, statement by the individual. Section D is important. The information must be included in the registry within 10 working days of the findings and must remain in the registry permanently. But what that means is when you're practicing, somebody does something, you have a hearing over at the AAU at HHS, and the administrative, they find against you, your name goes on that list for those purposes. I can also say that I don't think there's a requirement for facilities to check that registry beyond initial hiring.
And just as a follow-up, currently, we do not run a BEAS or DCYF registry check when someone is applying for a license here in New Hampshire. So we only do the FBI fingerprinting, which only comes back if there is law enforcement involvement.
Just to clarify, so you don't cross-check with criminal background check to BES?
We do not have that
Bs?
there is no requirement for that.
Okay.
So,
There used to be a thing in old novels where some doctor would go bad and he'd get struck off the registry. Is that what's gonna happen here? That these people are registered, but they've abused the elderly and they get struck off?
Well, that's what Jackie wants to work out. Oops.
yeah, I would like to please, I would like to make a motion that we eliminate, we get rid of section 1 and any parts of section 10 that Mr. Osterhaus assures me only is related to the removal of the LNA license, which I think is most of the 326B stuff, but not all of it. And then what I would do is include that as part of the amendment I get OLS to put together and would send out to people. And what we're voting on here is this is our intent. And then, you know, we'll either have an opportunity as a subcommittee or the full committee to vote on the final amendment if people are okay. Any discussion?
I second that motion.
Okay, thank you.
My only concern is that background check not attached to the LNA. That's a critical link,
that's-
missing link.
what we're
that-
getting
I understand. I mean, it sounded to me like we were okay. I mean, people could maybe get comfortable with all of it because they could add the training requirement but because of the way the federal thing works, we can't add the background check. And so there's a larger effort going on in the nursing thing, and maybe there's a way to fix it there.
Right,
I don't know.
Jackie can work that.
Jackie can look at it
Yeah.
and I, you know, whatever my view is on this, you know, I don't think we're not going to get through this with the background check requirement
Nope.
removed.
No, you're not.
Okay, so that would be my hesitation, big hesitation.
I understand.
Some of what you said earlier, I didn't hear because it was going that way
Sorry.
about Representative Grota's,
Oh,
what she's
Re-
doing.
Representative
and how-
Grota, I mean, she spoke to me later yesterday, I think it was.
Yeah.
And so I don't know the details, but there is a bill. Is it, if anyone's familiar with it, is it just a study or is it actually going to do something? I don't know. But there is another bill related to nursing, and what she said is, you know, if we remove this part out of this bill, the LNA part out of this bill, that, you know, she would add it and address it as part of the larger bill. And that's what I'm proposing. I mean, I
So
can't make
she's
her do it.
proposing a whole
Some
thing
other
for
stuff.
nursing as
Right.
a entirety.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's my understanding from what she said. And so I don't think we, you know, there's going to be disagreement on this one for,
Yeah.
you know, reasonable reasons. And so my proposal, my motion, which is, who seconded it? You did, okay. So, right, eliminate. Yeah, section 1.
Wow, that's a huge section.
No, it's, no, it's short. It's short.
No, 5.
Let me get to it. It's, right, page, no, it doesn't go to page 3 because well, it's only page, it's page 1, lines 1 through 5. That's it.
That's 2 is Nurse Practice Act.
Which we had, which we'll get to in a bit, okay? And any parts of section 10, and I don't know if you have those or. What?
I don't have the specific language in front of me.
Okay, so
We could take a look at the
can you
list.
get
and-
back to me when?
Yeah.
Well, all right. All right, so I was kind of hoping to put an amendment in. Well, we're not gonna, when are we executing? We're not executing until February?
Can we do maybe Tuesday, Wednesday?
I don't know that we have to meet again, but if we have to, we can just meet before. But the question is, when do we need this for Carol? And I think we're okay to wait. When did she say we were gonna be executing?
After session,
On which day?
the first,
Okay.
So we have
I
Tuesday,
mean,
Wednesday.
is it?
next
Yeah,
Thursday.
Yeah, we're gonna be going on for a while here. I mean, and sometime on Monday? Sometime on Monday? Okay, thank you. And so the motion is to repeal page 1, lines 1 to 5.
Just to
and-
be clear, you want me
yeah.
to go through this list, strike the ones that,
That are related to
to the
section
LNA
1.
licensure?
Right.
Okay.
And just give me a list, of which ones, because I have to give it to Olasta.
And more discussion?
Line, and pay, sorry, so the
Yeah.
section 10, I have to write this up. 10 for, the LNA related repeals. There's no guarantees in life, but I think, she said she would, she's been trustworthy. But she may not get it in. She can try and do something. Who knows what'll happen? And it may not be something we like. But what I think the situation right now is there's concern about this background check.
Right.
Even if some of us, voted to pass this as is, trusting the employer, except there's issues, I don't see it passing the committee. And so I don't see any point in holding this bill up, the parts we want to get through because of this section.
My biggest concern or question for that is the fact that the highest need is for elderly, LNA for elderly services
Yeah.
and the most vulnerable population. And we also want the workforce to stay stable.
Yeah.
And will this affect, if I ask you, will this jeopardize what we are embarking on by making it less safe, or I don't want to use the word less safe, but less oversight? Will it improve workforce or will it reduce the
Are you
safe-
asking about how the bill is written or at the motion that Representative Lekis has made?
at the motion to remove LNA out of it?
His motion, I believe, was to repeal the removal. Is that correct?
Right, that would
Representative?
leave things as they are today, unchanged.
So I think his motion was to leave the statute as it is, not as it is proposed here.
Right, so there would be,
Makes me feel better.
and you can speak to this, my understanding is one of the reasons for this is, LNAs don't get paid a whole lot. We actually want to get people in the field. They don't, and requiring both the registration, which we must, and the license, which we could get rid of, sets up more hurdles and more cost and more time. And so the goal here, I think, was to help get more LNAs. And so by removing the section, we're not helping with that goal. But there are concerns, and so that's why I support it in the first place. But
One
Mrs.
last quick question, sorry.
Yeah. No,
I
that's
keep,
fine.
We both keep turning it on. I'll let you go.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to say, and that's why I have confidence this will get picked up in another one, because the bottom line is we want our lowest income employees,
Yeah.
which are in the field, our licensed nursing aides, to not be hit with these fees. We
Right.
want to protect them from the punitive damage
Sure.
that our current duplicative process has on them, while still recognizing the safety
Yeah.
for our most vulnerable, the elderly, and
Right.
we know
And I- yeah.
that's a large
Yeah.
part of our
I
population.
understand.
so-
And I don't know, the answer to that, but
Right.
hopefully it can be found.
We'll
The other
find
thing I
one.
would recommend to Representative Mangiapudi, you seem to have some concerns that the current process, which would stay, doesn't have this check, or there's some elderly abuse thing. What I would say is talk to Representative Grota, and maybe as part of her process, something can happen.
And with this changes, will the opportunity for the LNA's growth in the career path, does that make it more easy to move on to licensed nursing or next level kind of thing, the opportunity for career growth?
I don't think that this changes any of those requirements or would, I'm not sure how that would affect that.
That would be nice.
Yes, Representative Browns.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, folks at the table, again. So if we eliminate section 1, does that make page 3, line 24 through 28 a moot point?
I think I already asked that, and I think the answer was no, but he can see what he says. That's kind of the question I already asked, but do you still?
We still have to maintain the registry.
Okay, thank you. That's simple. Thank you.
And then, okay. Any other discussion on this, or all in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, so that's what we'll do. And when I get the details from Mr. Osterhaus, I will draft that part of the amendment. So let's go back.
Mr. Chair, can I ask one quick follow-up to
course.
something that came out in that previous discussion?
Yeah.
As we're talking about possible amendments. So I'm very concerned to hear that the DCYF registry and the other registry are not being checked for licensing currently. And is that something that can be done in rulemaking, or do you need something legislatively? Should we add something in this bill if we are doing an amendment that directs you to look at those two registries? I mean, why are we keeping safety registries of known problems against women and children and the elderly and not looking at it when we're issuing license?
I think that's probably a question better posed to HHS than us. I don't know much about OPLC, but the comment I made was a few years back, maybe 3 years ago now, when I was BEAS counsel. There was a requirement to check the registry upon hiring, but not after that. So if an individual was subsequently added, an employer might not know. They send notifications. HHS would highly recommend employers check frequently. Some do, not all.
And I just want to add in other experiences, I would say, like Mr. Osterhout just said, that, has to correct me every time, I'm sorry, that you would want to look first at HHS because they have specific rules and regulations on who they can release it to. So if the change was going to come from somewhere, I think that would have to be step one. And then looking at OPLC rules and regulations would be step two.
Right, and as I said, I'd suggest taking that up with Jackie, because they're doing a larger study on nursing, and that could be something that they could deal with there. That's my suggestion. Not
As of
trying to
now,
do it here
it's
when
the-
we don't
no.
know.
Yeah, as of now, I think the agencies, whether it's small agency or big, large hospital, you're supposed to report to BES, and it's the individuals where they don't have access, they trust you to say, you have the license, and that is the one, that would be, they'll fall through the cracks, and that would be the concern, because if you have to get licensed agency certified to practice that or provide that services, you have to do these things, correct?
You're-
That's on the employer's onus.
You're right, and there's a growing, I mean, I know a lot of people hiring private licensed nursing aides for their parents and grandparents.
So I'd like to go back then to section 4, which starts on page 3, line 21, and ends on page 4, line 28, which we had started on. And there's really only two changes there. One is the addition at the end of that, starting at line 24 on page well, the whole section starts on page 3, line 21. And the whole thing ends on page 4, line 28. And so there's two changes in here. The rest of it's existing statute. One is starting on page 4, line 24 till the end, is what we just discussed, which is, having them handle the registry, which is they're required to do. The only other change, as I understand it, is on page 3, line 25, which is another one of these things where, under the changes we made last year, we moved certain authority from the board to OPLC, and this change just says this has to be done instead of by the board under this chapter, and elsewhere under this chapter it tells OPLC to do it. So it's kind of a cleanup. Right, those two changes.
And so may I ask a clarifying question,
Sure, of
Mr.
course.
Chair?
Yep.
So my understanding is that line 24 through 28 on page 4 is simply putting into statute practice that's already happening. Thank you.
Right, and so I guess why does it need to be there? It's a good idea?
Clarification.
Okay, all right, thank you.
How does the Board of Nursing or nurse,
Actually, good point.
Can
Does
be canceled.
do you folks or anybody have any issue with this section?
that should clarify, or that's clean?
No, we're fine with that. The biggest concern was the background checks for us.
I understand.
Certainly.
I'd like to move that we come to agreement on section
4.
4,
We keep it as is?
and keep it as written in this bill.
Okay,
I second.
thank you. Okay, any, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, good. All right, another one down.
Moving along.
Moving on. Yeah, I mean, you think this is bad. Jackie with that how many, 635, which was 300 pages, was just ridiculous. And it was done the same, we actually broke that bill up and had separate subcommittee meetings. Okay, well, I'd like to do section 5. Yeah, apparently. So this is short. This runs from page 4, line 29 through line 34. And so what was it? And this moves the requirement to arrange for the background check from the board to the office. That's where it strikes out board and adds office. And if I could ask, it lists, instead of just saying initial licensure, it adds the as a licensed practical nurse, registered nurse, advanced practice registered nurse. Is that just to make it clear, or is there
I
some?
think it was to specify that the LNA wouldn't need to do it. So if you're not going to move forward with the repeal of the LNA piece, we can probably take this sentence
Take and
out.
just leave the strike of board and add office?
I think so.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
can I ask for, so only for LNA that they have to do their own background check?
No.
How about the nurses and,
I think there's a I mean, you correct me, but, well, go on, you can answer.
If we remove that sentence, everyone will have to do the background check.
So I think the idea that changes, originally it was everybody had to do it, but if we were going to take out LNAs, and because they couldn't do a background check for LNAs, to take them out, they then had to list who needed them, if that's
Correct.
Yeah. Sir Rep. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, yes, so if we eliminate the bold part on 31 and 32, then we do have a background check for the nursing assistant
Yeah.
LNA
Right, it
again,
leaves it in.
It would be everyone licensed by the
which
board.
solves what we've been talking about. Thank you.
let me ask this question.
Sure.
Can't we make a rule to say only LNA's background check will be paid, not by the LNA because they're the lowest paid? That would be done automatically when they do the licensing?
Well, is it paid by the LNA now, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is the big contest,
But
right?
the issue is if you do that, it could be done, and again, I'd suggest dealing with the larger thing Representative Grote is, but there's a law that says the boards, they have to be self-funding. And so if you're going to have them pay for the background check, they're going to have to add it to the licensing fees for the LNAs under current statute.
Oh, that's.
A registration
Yeah,
fee.
it's just moot point, but if the main reason we are trying to cut
am
the
I-
cost for them, right? That is, if there's a way of voucher, give something
Yeah,
just for the
but
LNAs.
then you'd have to specify where the money comes from. Are you going to have licenses for other professions subsidize it? Does it come from the general fund? Yeah, right. I mean, so that's a larger question, and again, I'd either take
Okay.
it as a separate bill or part of Representative Grote's thing.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly. Oh, go on. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, here's my question. Is there any harm in leaving this in the way it is, the bolded section?
Yeah, because it will no longer require that the LNAs have a background check, which I
Every
thought people were
applicant
concerned about.
For initial licensure as a licensed practical nurse.
Because
registered
LNAs aren't in that
shall
list,
submit to the board a criminal history record release form.
but LNAs aren't in the list.
Oh, so we would have to add the LNA back in here. So here's my concern. If Jackie works out some different language,
Yeah.
is there a way we can write this that isn't harmful, but will cover us if Jackie works out another way to eliminate the duplicative license?
Yeah, Jack, I mean, in another bill, you can make that. work.
Right,
We
but
don't have to, we don't have to do anything here.
I know we don't have to, but what I'm saying is we can save ourselves a lot of trouble if we add licensed nurse in here.
I would actually say it would save us trouble and Jackie not to do that. The only reason is if, let's say they decide, what Representative Mangiapudi wants. So they're going to they're gonna say, we're gonna pay for the LNA's
Yeah.
background checks from the general fund or
Right.
wherever.
Right.
Then all they would have to do as part of that bill is add this line
Okay.
back, you know.
They can add it in.
And we're
easy
not
enough.
gonna
All
add
right.
it in, so we're gonna leave it. And they
Okay.
could just change the statute as this would, but we're not.
All right, so we're
Otherwise,
taking,
otherwise you're gonna have conflicting changes.
I hear you. So we're taking that out.
If instead of this laundry list, it said licensure or registration.
Well, that's actually another,
Anybody
well,
apply.
because under 541A, they consider, under 541A, they consider certification, the licensure, it works, but,
So if you- this was
Just
excluded
for
from
a
the-
curiosity's sake, how
Right,
many
everybody
LNAs
wants-
do we
yeah,
have in the
kill that
state?
line.
Approximately, about 20,000?
huh, what? I
We
missed the
have,
question.
we have 12,000
12,000.
LNAs.
Okay,
And of the 12,000, there's approximately 1,000 that are M&As. But under our board, we have just shy of 50,000 licensees total.
I use those numbers for something. For
Yeah,
the disciplinary.
1,000 total, but
Like
out of the
13.
1,000.
Yeah, so there's 12,000 total LNAs. And of the 12,000, 1,000 of them are LNAs and M&As.
okay. Representative Brown. I would love a motion. Yeah, what it would be to
Strike.
take, you're right, to remove the bold in those two lines.
Second,
I would make a
31
motion
and
that,
32?
That's page 4.
yeah,
I'll
I'd
write it
make a
down here.
motion, yeah,
Yep.
am I doing, what,
Go.
sorry.
I just want to take some notes, line
Got it.
31 to 32, and your motion is?
Motion is that we amend page 4, line 31 and 32, removing the bold type, which is added information, leaving it as it was in RSA 321, 326B15-1.
Okay,
but
Accepting the changes of board to office.
board to office, right?
right.
Excuse me, yes, but not including the change of board to office
No,
on
we-
line 32 or line 34.
No, we do want those. I mean, don't remove those.
Yes.
Not including,
Keep those,
yes.
okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Second?
Second,
All right,
I'm confused.
Okay.
Sorry.
all right. So let me see if I can
Titles, but leave
clarify, and
the
then
board.
anybody else can. So what he's saying is that we would take section 1, we would just remove the part that's in bold on lines 31 and 32 and do nothing else.
So every applicant for initial license.
Shall submit,
To the
and-
office.
right,
Criminal history record with this form.
yes.
As provided.
And if I may, that's what that will for initial license.
Yeah.
Accepting the bold with the
Correct.
Right. So,
The office changes of.
okay,
So the responsibility falls on OPLC to make sure they get the background.
yeah, as it is today. Right, it doesn't change it. So, we have Representative Gould seconded. So, all in favor, anyone opposed? I don't hear anything. Another unanimous, all right, cool. All right, so that was 5. What else have we got? Certainly.
What does a background check cost? Just about?
$25.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, it's still 25? This is 12 years ago.
48.25. Sorry.
What? 48.25?
48.25.
Yeah, I was thinking it was 12 years
$48.25.
ago, 15 years ago, 25.
$48.25?
Yeah.
$48.25.
We got a precise answer. Oh, we have the real
That's
authority.
why we're doing it. I apologize. That's because we do a state only, which is 25, and then the federal background check, which is the additional fee. So it's a total of 48.25.
Nothing is
I didn't
simple.
think I fully made that.
Okay. So what I'd suggest doing now is.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Absolutely.
Page 4, line 37, we changed licensure to registration, but if it's
Page
gonna
4.
stay licensure, we could probably not do that change as well. Last line on the page. Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
I think.
is that the only thing in section 6? No, there's a bunch
Well,
of
I haven't
stuff.
turned the page yet.
We'll have to, we'll deal with section 6 and
Okay.
we can do that there, but thank you.
Oh, I
for-
didn't. I thought you were flipping pages. Sorry.
No, thank you for pointing that out. That's why you're here.
And I'd like clarification on the whole registration versus license. Is it currently a dual licensing procedure that's happening?
As soon as the LNA passes their certification, they're put on the registry, but they can't practice in the state until they get that
License.
second level of licensing. So yes,
So currently, it really is a registration and a license.
yes.
Registry.
So the only
Well,
thing the license is.
Your
registration.
registration occurs when you put in the registry, I guess.
No.
All right, so this one, the next one I'd like to do is something different, and that is section 2, which is dealing with the, among other things, the membership of the Board of Nursing.
Can I make a quick statement about this?
Absolutely.
The language here was actually already approved by House and Senate EDNA last year, but because there were so many bills floating around HB2, 655, 409, at one point after this was approved, another bill retroactively changed it back to what it was.
Oh, I remember that.
So I think it was SB 107. That may or may not have been my fault, which is why I'm aware of it. But I want to point out that this has already been approved by.
Thank you for
both
that.
House
But
and
given
Senate.
that we're not bound by what we
Oh, no,
we
but
ourselves did last
It
year.
might be helpful.
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's good information. So first of all, does anyone, I'm going to ask people, to see who have an opinion on or any issue with this. I'm okay with it, and we actually voted for it last year.
Page are we looking?
Oh, I'm sorry. Page 1, starting at line 7. No, 6, actually. Page 1, line 6 through page 2, line 22. And we can go through what it does. Maybe there's somebody here from, if you'd like to.
Again, Samantha O'Neill, Chair of the Board. The board has a concern about decreasing the number of board members. And in March of 2023, we were actually approved to increase our board numbers from 11 to 13. I have been on the board since September 2017, and during my tenure on the board, we have not had any issues with a quorum, whether it be our monthly meetings, if we have a special meeting, or if we have emergency hearings. Our board is obviously voluntary and very committed to their service. They come prepared. We don't have an issue at all with the quorum. But in addition to that, each of our board members have a specialty. And so that is very important when we're looking at best practice, clinical practice. We have myself as human resources. We have multiple people who are hospital setting, APRN, home care, long-term care facility, ambulatory, and each one brings a level of expertise that not the other one has. So you can tap into that individual's expertise and knowledge to be able to make sound decisions when we're addressing licensees and what their particular matter is that's before us. And if we change that, it's different saying, I'm going to fire you because you're not doing a good job. That's much different than we're going to suspend or put your license on probation or revoke a license because you've done something without having that level of expertise from our various board members.
Okay, could someone from OPLC, if they want, Director Courtney or someone else who would comment on this? And somebody will have to give her some room. She can kick somebody out. She's the boss, so.
The only positive thing is I get to say what I want. Thank you, Lindsay Courtney, Executive Director, OPLC. I would agree with Chair O'Neill's observations. I think that we certainly have boards that have quorum issues and or issues with engagement in the sense that, they're not reviewing the materials and they're not actively participating. They're playing Candy Crush while they're no joke. While there's a hearing. That is not an issue for the Board of Nursing at all. I would say that their packets are more jam-packed than any other board. If you print it out, it's like this. Over 1,000 pages. They have more hearings than anybody else. They take it very seriously.
And so from that standpoint, we don't have any concerns at the office about their ability to get business done.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have
sir,
a question.
If I could just get a little something here first, for understanding. And, so in Roman 1 of this, that's changing the membership. Well, also and taking out the line, any interested individual, whatever, is that just because that isn't necessary, or what's the deal with that section being removed? Line on lines 9 and 10.
So I think that language, I mean, is not necessary
Yeah, that was.
because anybody can make any recommendation to the governor and ultimately it's up to him. So I think that's probably why that was removed.
Okay, it just complicates things for no good reason.
Yeah.
That was kind of my take on it. All right. And so, but otherwise, what this is. Yeah, well, and also who the members are. So if we got rid of this, it would go to the current thing, which is 13 members appointed.
Correct.
And right now, it's 6 registered nurses, 2. No, you're taking out of whom shall be. Is that just redundant language?
So currently APRNs have to maintain licensure as an RN as well. So this says currently in law, you have to have 6 RNs, 2 of whom shall be APRNs.
Okay, so why would, but why was the of whom shall be? I mean, that, otherwise that clause isn't changed. That's all that's taken out. I mean, maybe it isn't necessary, but it's weird.
Well, I think
No, well,
I think it just makes clear that you've got a certain number of APRNs, certain number of RNs.
okay. It's just trying to clean up the language.
Just clean it up.
So, I mean, having even, it sounds to me like these 2 things I just talked about, leaving those deletions in there, even if we leave everything else the same, makes sense?
Well, I think if you wanted to clean up the language and maintain the existing composition of the
Yeah.
board, you could just say the members of the board shall include 4 APRNs, 2 APRNs, 2 LPNs, 3
Or
LNAs.
we could just.
Or you could just,
Get rid of this whole section. leave it
Yeah,
the way it is,
correct.
Which would be simpler, which I'm a big fan of, but.
yeah.
The other one is, oh, I see. That's just because you went from plural to singular on line 12. I'm just looking at I'm looking to see what other changes are in here and, okay. And, I mean, I'll get to people's questions on the committee, but just quickly, is there anybody here who has an objection to leaving the makeup of the board the same as it is now and just drop this part? Okay. And questions on the subcommittee?
My only question, Mr. Chair, is,
I
are
think-
you
I think,
saying,
Representative
sorry.
Montecuti had one pending.
Oh,
if
so
She still has it.
with your board members, do you use both hybrid? If in case they can do Zoom versus all in person, that flexibility might give a lot more compliance for quorum, correct? Do you use hybrid? Okay.
Yes, I would say this board does not have a problem though meeting quorum under any circumstance. I think that and they try to attend in person because it's more, it's easier. But yeah, absolutely. They have some members that attend remotely for various issues as
Yeah.
authorized.
It's just to make sure that if I'm an RN and I'm on, I don't get out on time at 3, but there is a board meeting, at least I can call in and be participatory.
Yes.
Than driving up for an hour.
Certainly, although their meetings last all day. So they typically have the day, they take the day. But absolutely. Did I miss anything?
Representative Gould?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted a clarification of what you were saying in terms of get rid of this section. Are you saying we're going to get rid of the whole section?
No. I mean, removing it from the amendment. And, well, actually, we wouldn't really do that, sorry, because this is to make it read as this. So we would make it go back to what's in statute.
So
I
from line 6 through
Well, eight actually, well.
8.
8 or, no, it starts at, 8 actually, or 6. Yes,
From
6
line
through
6.
15.
through 15,
we-
we would just
I tell OLS, leave
do
it,
away with the cross-outs and do
changes.
away with the bold additions.
all the
Okay.
changes. Yeah,
And so it
But-
goes back to the
the same.
current text of the
That's
statute.
what I'm intending.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
but if I heard it correctly, the board wanted to go from 7-member to 13.
But in
It is
current
13.
statute, it's 13. The amendment was to drop it to 7.
Oh, okay, okay, got it.
And
Thank
I
you.
guess the only other question, Director Courtney, is, what was the original impetus for this section?
So I think if you recall back in HB2, the original version, last year, the governor had proposed completely reducing the size of pretty much every board to 5 or 7. And the impetus was really just generally there's a challenge with recruiting and retaining public members. So by reducing the size, you reduce the number to 1 public member. Again, that hasn't been an issue for this specific board, but I think that was the general
Okay,
gist.
so it was a broad brush and.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you look in the calendar, the House calendar just came out, there's a member notice in there that's going to hopefully point people at you.
Thank you.
We finally got in.
I appreciate it.
We'll see if it works. Any other questions?
So, for you,
Yes.
so process-wise, we would just remove this entire section.
Well, the changes to it, but because on line 7 or line 6, it says amend RSA 326B3 to read as follows. If we actually remove the section, that means we would delete it from statute, which is not what we want to do, because then
No.
there'd be no members on the board.
As the newest and most naive member of this committee, I would say that doesn't look like the case, but,
Well, actually, it's kind of the way
okay.
to
we
read
could-
these things.
that-
What
that's-
happens is we're telling whoever modifies the statutes is take 326B3 and rip it out and replace it with what we provide here. And if what
Correct.
we provide here doesn't have section 1, there will be no members on the board. And I don't think that'll work.
Well, no, if we, if
Am I-
we remove the entire section, no one even considers a change to the RSA, right?
No, wrong.
Okay, thank you.
No, we're actually telling them remove all of the current RSA section and replace it with what's in the bill.
Understood.
Okay.
So basically saying no board, no
Yeah,
members,
no,
no
it
appointment, that's it.
Would not work.
So may I just ask a point
Certainly.
of clarification?
Yeah.
I think, I could be wrong, but I think if you just delete the entire section regarding nursing assistants, we would just stay the course under existing statute. And if the committee wanted to make changes to 326B, obviously that's when you would,
Well, there's other changes down below in other sections, which we're going to talk about. We haven't
Okay.
talked about yet. So that's, I mean,
excellent.
if we wanted to
Okay.
get rid of all of section 2, that'd be fine. And if it turns out in discussion, we decide to get rid of all the changes there, then fine, then we'll get rid of the whole section.
You just
But-
kill the bill. Okay.
But I'm not anticipating we'll do that.
Understood. Thank you for that
Yeah.
clarification,
And
Representative.
so what I'd like to do is, because there's pieces here that have different effects and meanings, not just on the I would like to just take a very quick vote. Are people fine with leaving the membership of the board as specified in section 1, Roman 1 of section 2 alone, the way it is in statute today?
So
That's my motion.
what you're basically saying is nothing is going to be struck.
Correct.
All the struck
No
thing will
struck,
come
no
back.
added, no nothing.
Okay, so it'll all come back up.
All right, so, okay, so let me record this, or at the end of the day, I will never remember what we did, and I will
So
never be.
go back to what it was
And this-
without the strike. Stay the same.
Correct. Actually, not remove, but revert, basically. All right. All right, all in favor? Anyone opposed? No, good. All right, so, this is, I think I had myself, I did it, and Representative Brown, so we're all set. Okay, so section 2, it looks like all it's doing is where it specifies RN, it's going to allow an APRN. Is that? The rest is the same. Is that my understanding correct? That's Roman 2 of section 2. line 16 through 20 of page 1.
Correct. I think it just makes clear what the requirements are to be an APRN member of the board.
Does anybody here have an objection to that change? I mean, anyone? Okay, cool. So, I think we may combine other things, but we'll remember we agreed to that. And then section 2, 4.
Three.
Actually, we do need to make some changes.
Yeah, they're
Because
changing
there's
the
a
tense.
Well, they're singular to plural because of
Right,
the proposed
Right,
membership
they're
change.
reflecting different number.
Okay, but that's not the case for,
Three or,
for 3.
yeah.
And then 4, actually, it goes from members to member, which is a problem. Residents to resident, that's
A resident, so
Right.
from
And-
multiple to single.
but what it's also doing is it's striking, these members shall have a minimum of 5 years' experience as an LNA, at least 3 of which shall have immediately preceded the date of their appointment. And I see that's being removed, and what's, I can guess, but what's the reason for that?
I would just guess, and so I don't want to guess. I think it would be to open up membership. I would say though that I think, and I can't speak for the board, I think the board has a concern about that. I think from my own observation, I think it's important to keep that restriction in. Many LNAs become LNAs and stay LNAs for a very limited period of time, just for various reasons. And I think to really be able to offer experience that you need on a regulatory board, you need some experience.
Can we get a comment from the board on that?
We agreed that we would like to leave that requirement in there for the reasons that Director Courtney stated. And we have actually with me today is one of our LNA board members who her career is LNA.
Okay.
If you want to hear directly from her as to why she feels that's important.
I don't need to, but
Okay.
someone else might. But, so is there anybody here who wants to remove this requirement?
I would
I'm
say.
out here
Oh,
first,
okay.
and then we'll talk about it. I just want to get testimony from people. Sounds like nobody. So from the subcommittee, Representative
What I'm
Laputi.
thinking is, if I understood the process for LNA, somebody could be on the registry, never worked as LNA, didn't get licensed, didn't have experience, but because they are LNA, they can be on the board. So their input would not be as relevant to practicing LNAs.
Yes,
Am I
that's
correct?
correct. Yes, and that's a very good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my guess, which apparently is wrong, is that LNAs wouldn't stay as LNAs for long, that they would advance. But if there are people who are making LNA as their career, then yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Anyone else? Because, well, what I would propose, and we'll group them together as far as voting, is to actually leave Roman 4 alone, to remove all the changes. And that would, because we're leaving the members of the board alone, it would leave the tense, the singular plural thing, go back to what it's in statute, and we would leave this requirement in, and yeah,
It's all the same for 3, 4, and 5. I've combined them,
right,
knock them all
right. So 3, 4, and 5. I'm looking at 5, and
Nothing to be struck. or
yeah,
not-
a 5. So, Representative Brown, to basically leave 3, 4, and 5 alone, is that, okay, I would. Okay, so revert. Page 1, lines 21 through page 2, line 3. And that was Brown and Gould. And all in favor? Anyone opposed? No. Okay, cool. All right, so we got that. And then we've got on page 2, starting at line 4, Roman 6. No more than 2 board members should be associated with any particular agency. Anyone here opposed to this? Any question? I mean, that seems reasonable to me.
Sorry, sorry.
Oh, no, actually, that's not a change. I apologize. So actually, the rest down to line 13, where things are struck out, it's unchanged. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So if you could, if someone, Director Courtney, what is the deal with striking out Roman 9, 10, and 11?
Last year in SB 107, we drafted language that was applicable to all the boards. So this is basically redundant language now.
Okay. Okay.
Quick question. Last year's,
Last
last legislative, has it made it to the rulemaking yet, or it's in the process?
It's in the statute.
So there's no rulemaking, so. Would you like a motion? Yeah, and give me a moment to write some things down. What the motion I'd like is, otherwise, I have the 2 things about reverting those 2 sections, and I would say otherwise, leave section 2 as is, if somebody can make that motion. That was Manjapudi, or somebody want to second it?
Sure.
Okay, all right. Okay, all in favor? Oh, certainly, more.
So we're talking about all of Section 2 Nurse Practice Act.
Except for what we just discussed around section 1 and sections 3, 4, and 5, where we're gonna.
So what I have is, my notes were that we're keeping the same section.
Microphone, please.
yeah,
Thank
good.
you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
that my notes say that we're keeping the same line 6 through 18.
We're gonna leave what's in the bill the same,
Yep.
or through 22,
Wait a minute. No. Let's try to get the same terminology. So we're saying the same
all
things.
right. There's
So
deleting from the bill and deleting from statute. So let me go through and see, and I'll go through it and make
yeah,
sure
let's use
I
your
agree
language.
with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That Roman 1, we're going to revert to current statute.
Which is 13 members.
Yep.
Right. All those changes
Correct.
go away.
Correct.
And the same thing is the case for Roman 2 will leave as is in the bill.
Wait,
Okay.
Roman 2 what again?
Would stay as it's in the bill.
Correct. Keep the
which-
change.
And
Correct.
all we're doing is we're saying, we're treating APRN as equivalent
Right,
to an RN.
right. No, I'm
Okay,
good.
so that'll stay as in the bill.
Yep.
Sections 3, 4, 5,
Right.
and actually.
We're
3,
throwing out the
3,
changes.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 will all remain as in the bill.
Correct. No changes.
Oh, no, actually, that's not true. I apologize. 'cause I
Not in
missed-
the bill.
I missed. 3, 4, and
In the law.
5 will revert to current statute.
Correct.
And 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 will revert to current, stay as in the bill.
Yeah,
I-
Because it's
That
struck.
works.
9, 10, 11, it's struck.
that works.
And we want to
Stays
keep
struck.
striking them.
Yep.
Right.
That stays
That's,
struck.
Yeah.
so as I understand it, that's the motion.
They're not struck in this.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, the bill would strike them from current statute. Right.
They were already done that.
What-
The
What?
previous bill had done.
It's just duplicative of a prior. bill.
No, it didn't do it in, correct me if I'm wrong, it didn't strike it in from this part of the RSA. It added it to a higher level that applied to everything.
Correct. It's in our RSA 310.
Yeah, which is the overall
This is
OPLC.
redundant language, so we need to strike.
Correct. I mean, you don't need to,
Need to.
but to make it nice and neat for us,
And you end
yes.
up with nightmares, like if some future legislature changes the one in 310, then this will stay in here, and there'll be a generate conflict, which is
Yeah,
ungood.
That was my mistake, Mr. Chair, sorry.
Okay, so if we understand, if we understand what we're voting on, all in favor?
Aye.
And
Aye.
All opposed? None, all right. All right, thank you. So I think that finishes section 2. So we're done with 1, 2. We're done with 3. We're done with, I'm sure we're done with 4, but let me go. Let me take a look back. We did 4. We did 5. We were going to get into 6, so we're going to look at section 6. And maybe future such bills could be, I don't know. It's actually more work if they're separate bills, I guess. But okay, so what is this doing? This, I'm sorry. We're starting at page 4, line 35, and continuing. Where does 7 start?
Starts at line 36, page 5.
Okay. Oh yeah, I'm missing it because it's right at the bottom of the page. All right. So if, I mean, okay, I know, attorney, Mr., I don't know what's appropriate, but Osterhaus. Hey, you, Doug? No. We've been dealing a lot together. I don't want to be disrespectful. But, so you mentioned that, there's an issue, something needs to change here because we kept the LNA
Correct.
stuff.
Correct. Because
And-
you didn't do away with the LNA
And is that
licensure.
only line 37?
Well, I haven't turned the page yet.
Oh, okay. You're invited to turn the page. It's not that late. We shouldn't be getting silly, and that's me. That's on me.
Yeah, if I might,
Yeah.
it looks like the deletion on line 7 and 8 will have
Oh.
to remain because they still can't apply for a license.
Right, so so what is this doing? So the first, let's go through this. So the
Yep.
first part is on line 37 on page 4 is just there because of section 1.
Right. Director Courtney actually has a recommendation that most of these changes were just to come in compliance with CFRs, but we can probably do away with all of section 6. Yeah, we just
The
lift it right
whole
out.
section out of the bill. And so so there's 2 things. There's the dealing with the fact that the LNAs were going to go away, the license. We're going to keep LNAs. And to become in compliance with CFRs, but do we need the language to come in compliance with CFRs?
No. So the New Hampshire, this statute was very artfully crafted
Is what?
artfully crafted
Okay.
to be in compliance with the federal CFRs in the sense that in order to be on the registry, you have to have, quote, taken a state approved nursing registry assistant program. So during the state of emergency and then thereafter, this language basically states you shall be deemed to have taken a program if you have certain a certain MOS in the military service. So
Yeah.
I don't think we should mess too much with it. The changes are intended to allow somebody on the registry to, if you were doing away with licensure, to also continue to satisfy and be placed on the registry. But if you're no longer making that change, you don't need any of these changes that are in section 6.
Okay.
I just wouldn't want to mess with the licensure by alternate experience.
Right. So I'm going to make a motion, then we'll have discussion. And my motion is that we remove section 6 from the bill. And now we can have, and a second?
Yeah.
A second. By removing it from the bill, then you remove the changes. I know the language is funny.
No, it's not. It's not the stage in the.
Well, see, because what it does is it says nurse practice. It says, there's if you take out section 6, hang on. Representative Gould, if you take out section 6, you're taking out the part that says amend RSA 326B 21-A to read as following. If you take that out, you're not making any changes to RSA 321.
I understand that,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect.
Oh, certainly.
But as you see in other places, the current statute gets printed out, and it's just the changes that wouldn't be in here. We wouldn't be removing the section of the chapter from the
We would be
amended bill.
removing the section from the bill. We would not be removing it from statute.
Okay,
That's, I think I got that right. All right, so you, did somebody,
You made the motion.
I made the
I
mo-
think I seconded it.
okay, so me, and then we can have discussion if there's, just need to write down. Okay, and discussion, Representative Mangiaputi.
Quick question. Since we have an LNA, I would like to ask if the having license make them feel more professional or not having license? Just a simple question.
Sure.
I know direct care professional got that title and they felt more respected.
Yes, my name's Melissa Tuttle. I am an LNA. For me and my more seasoned LNAs, the license is very important to us. I know there's issues with costs, and I know a lot of us would be willing to cover that cost to keep that license, because I know it's a play of words, but for us, it's our career.
Thank you. That was my concern.
And just, just a follow-up on that. So as I understand it, the title would still be licensed nursing assistant, even if that part went away. So I'm a little wondering why, and also, at least what we proposed doing until we ran into the background check issue, was that the training requirement would be the same, everything else would be the same. You'd still be called an LNA. Under the law, it'd be considered a license. And you just wouldn't have to go through the double process.
Yeah, and it's all on play of words, and everybody it means something different to the way you word it. For us, being licensed, you go and you see a license number. On a registry, you're no longer, you're just a person, just a name, there's nothing attached to it. So when we search other CNAs in other states, it's just a name, but when you go on your license, you can see your whole history, your whole record, how long you've been there. That goes away when you're on a registry, because it's just updated every 2 years.
Okay, thanks for helping me understand, because I didn't really get it. Yeah, Representative Brown.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Clarify for me, if you're on the registry, you must get a document from OPLC that says you are this. And is there a number there?
So I think the way the state has implemented the registry and the licensure, they historically have conflated the two. And because licensure has been required, there hasn't been a separate notification that goes out regarding registration. But we use the same licensing system. And if you pull up somebody's name who is an LNA, there will be two entries. One, it'll say registry only, and it'll have a number. The other will be licensed nursing assistant, and it would have a number. I think if we were to operationalize the bill as proposed, you would just eliminate the registry portion because you would be required to refer to LNAs as LNAs. That's how we would operationalize it. But in practice, they do not receive a document right now that says you're on the registry. We send them the document when they get the license. But I think honestly, we probably should be sending both. But I think in practice, the processes have been conflated.
Any other
So-
questions? Representative
So,
Mangiaputi?
yeah, if we are trying to save cost for the LNAs and we are increasing the cost for OPLC, if you have to send two cards, two things, right? Or is it like driver's license, non-driving ID, non-driver's ID?
So the cost, there's really not an additional cost. The issue with the cost is that to be on the registry, we're not permitted to charge anyone to be on the registry because the state is getting funds for the registry. Now, the issue is those funds are not going to the office. They're going to the Department of Health and Human Services. And we get a very small portion of that. And the reason for that is because we have this duplicative process, I'm not able to parse out and say, these expenses are due to the registry, but these expenses are due to the LNA. And I think if you were to basically combine the process into one process, we could say this entire process is $1 million. Please pay up. But right now, that's the issue with the cost. I mean, we certainly, we have funding, but that's the issue with the cost. It's an allocation issue.
Mr. Chair, there's the answer for the funding.
Yeah, actually,
There's
I was
the
just
end.
going to ask,
That's
so if we had kept section 1, and got rid of the licensing process, just kept with certification, would that funding basically pay for, in effect, what you're calling a license for the LNAs?
Yes, the other way to handle this is to just eliminate the fee,
But the money's got to.
yes.
and then the license could be considered the registry, and then I could go to HHS and say, give me $1 million. But right now I can't, I mean, the bulk of the Board of Nursing, a lot of their hearings have to do with LNAs, but I can't say that, the cost of prosecuting those cases and investigating those cases is because of the license versus the registration and vice versa. So practically that's the problem.
So you're not diluting the standard. You're not demoting, or psychologically, you're not saying the LNAs you're not worthy of
Right,
licensing.
your license, it's called, I mean, if it weren't for the concerns about the background check issue, I would really push to keep section 1.
Yeah,
Because
that
it'd eliminate the cost to become an LNA. They're called licensed. It's going to show up on the thing as a license, the whole deal. But I think what's standing in the way of it right now is the concerns. There's some way to deal
That's
with
what I'm saying. For the
issue around-
funding for background check, if you combine the registry and the licensing
don't-
and give it to
Director Courtney can
OPLC.
answer me, but I don't think the federal money can be used for the background check because they say I don't know.
No, it can't be used for the background check. They have to pay the $48.25. So, but
What's the application fee?
their application fee is $35, but the average cost of licensure is $155. So the license fee of $35 is not covering the $155 cost. So because of overhead and because of staff and because all the other things. So, but to be on the registry, we can't even charge them the $35. So if structurally, if it were combined, if the fee were eliminated and we treated it as one process, I could go to HHS and say, pay me $155 per person. I can't do that right now because I can't attribute certain portion of the expenditures to the registry versus the LNA. That's the issue with cost.
So if we could have kept that first part, then not only would you not have to charge the LNAs for the license, you would stop overcharging all the other nurses to pay for the LNA's licenses. Is that true, more or less?
Yes.
There you go.
Yep.
That was my point.
That is probably true. I do think there's a different way to deal with it that's not statutory, which is to just eliminate the fee because we would be in compliance with the federal requirements that we not charge a fee to be on the registry. But
then could you get the money out of HHS?
I think I could.
Ooh. But you can do that on your own. You don't need.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So going back to the LNA who's here, I think it behooves us to be really fair and considerate of the feelings of people who have got an LNA and they're proud to have that title. I did this. I'm an LNA. Here's my license, and it says that, and here's my number. Am I 100% clear that if this were to move forward as proposed and the requirement to go through the licensing process is removed, you're still going to call them an LNA, and they will receive some type of a document that says you're an LNA and here's a number, which is going to be your registration number. And would that be satisfactory from a making you not feel bad standpoint? And don't take that the wrong way.
I would say the first part, Director Courtney can say whether that's
Yes.
true, and then how.
2 questions. Thank you. There was a follow-up.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yes, that's true. That's how we would do
Okay,
it.
and then
So I think what's really important at the end of the day for us as LNAs is just as long as the people that we work for, that we know they're fully trained competent to do their job. We know background checks have been done just because of the people. I'm in home care, so I'm in people's homes all by myself. I know that I am a good person, but it doesn't mean the person next to me might be good. So those are our key important things that are important to us. Regardless, we know this is where we're going to go. Registry, license, unlicensed, non-licensed, we're okay with that. It's just the end result is we're protected, the people are protected, background checks are done. And then that's important to us because a lot of us don't get into this for the money. We get into it because compassion, caring, we want to give back, we want to help, we want to step in where people cannot.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that
thank you.
answer. Thank you.
So, Representative Gould.
I just want to say thank you for what you do.
Absolutely. So we have the motion to remove section 6 from the bill, leaving what's in statute now. Do we need any further discussion? Okay. No? All right. So all in favor? All opposed? I don't hear anyone. All right. Great. So that's 6. And we're doing the march through the bill. That goes down to 7. And yeah, that's sorry. Thank you. That starts page 5, line 36, ends at page 6, line 4. I see only one change, which is another one of the changing board to office on who issues the license and all that stuff. Okay, let me make some notes here. So that's section 7. As is. Gould. Brown. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Excellent. Okay. So section 8. I think this is another one just like the one we just dealt with. Okay, great. Section 8 as no. Well, we have to. Where's this page of page?
We should probably look at that once we've gone through the list in 10 and see if that needs to.
Hang on a moment. So, yeah, you got into the next. Yeah, we're on 8.
Oh,
Yeah, numbers. You got different levels of numbers and Roman numerals and small letters and everything else.
But the only change I see in 8 is on line 7, which says the board to office. So the nursing board to OPLC. That is the only change I see in this section.
That's my take.
So I would make a motion that we accept section 8 as it is written.
Okay, all in favor? All
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Okay, good. So that's 8. And I think we have 2 more to go. So what is 9? Oh, this is the telehealth thing. Oh, and if I could ask Director Courtney or someone, and so on page 6, line 18, where it strikes 328I and J, is that related to the LNA removal? What is that about?
No, so if you look in section 10, section 10 proposes to eliminate registration of medical technicians
Okay.
and licensure of medical imaging. So if you do that, then you would need to strike from our statute their ability to provide telehealth services.
Okay, I get that. So I think then the next thing, which I know, there's actually 2 issues here. There's the, which we need to, I'd like to disentangle anyway. And that's the registration of medical technicians, which, correct me if I'm wrong, that's in section 10, lines 22 through 24. Is it anything else?
Is this the radiology technicians?
No, well, there's medical technicians and then there's the radiation therapy and medical imaging. And I'd like to deal with them separately because at least I'm thinking we might want to do different things.
Yes, section lines 22 to 24 are just medical technicians.
Okay, and, that's okay. Section 10. So, and I've been involved in this issue for some years, just to get things set up, as I understand it, first of all, what does medical technicians cover? I'd like, know what that is. And what is what's the effect of the registration other than they actually just have to, there's some list of their names and presumably address and whatever. Is that?
Yes, I can cover that, representatives. So generally, a medical technician is anyone who is otherwise unlicensed, who works in a particular facility, who may come into contact with controlled drugs. That's not an actual profession. So, which leads to the issue that we have, and regardless of what the legislature does, I think there needs to be a change because we don't have a quorum. We have not had a quorum in years.
A quorum in?
Of a board. We don't have a board because nobody identifies as a medical technician because it's just somebody who happens to work in a facility who's unlicensed who may come into contact. That's not an actual profession. It doesn't describe the activity that they do. So we have a hard time recruiting people. So the registration is very simple. Do you meet that criteria? You get on the list. But the purpose of the registration presumably is to protect the public and so that you're removing people or disciplining people who do things that are not ideal or considered misconduct. Because we don't have a quorum of the board, we are not able to do the latter half. So I have about 11 complaints, some of which I would consider to be emergencies that we've not been able to do anything with because we don't have a board. So regardless of what you do with the registration, if you keep it, something needs to change because it's essentially dysfunctional at this point.
So, if you get a complaint you consider serious, could you just send it to law enforcement or something?
If there's a criminal component,
Yeah.
sure,
Like
but the
stealing
person,
drugs or something.
yeah, which is a very common complaint. Yes, absolutely. But of course, the standard is different. It's beyond a reasonable doubt, as opposed to preponderance of the evidence. And secondly, they're still in the registration, and there's nothing to lead the public or employers to notify them that there's an issue with respect to diversion.
Representative Manchaputi.
Yeah, so they are their own board, medical
Correct.
what is the board called?
The
Medical
Board of
technician-
Registration and Medical Technicians, I believe, is the
Board of Registration of Medical Technicians.
Yes.
So it's all the radiology technician,
no,
all-
no.
everything. It's
no.
No.
just the
Yeah, just people.
Yeah, actually, I was
Yeah.
going to ask that question. So my younger son at one time worked cleaning in a hospital,
Mm-hmm.
operating rooms and the emergency room.
Did he have access to controlled drugs? Maybe.
He might have, as in the ER, probably.
Then he might have been required to register as a medical
It was in
technician.
Mass, but not here, but yeah.
Yes. But he wouldn't go around saying, I'm a medical technician. That's not something that people,
No.
there's not that professional identity, which is why we have a hard time
No,
recruiting.
he called himself a fancy janitor.
There you go. Maybe we should recruit for it. I don't know.
But, okay, so I wanted to get some idea of what.
So
and-
there
and-
is no board, they're not under any other board, like the nursing, LNAs are under nursing, board of nursing, no.
There is a board in statute. There are no actual people to comprise the board. I think maybe we have one person. And so if you keep the registration and it's a peer registration, I would suggest eliminating the board and allowing the office to handle these types of claims, which is very similar to what we do with opticians, which doesn't have a board, if you keep the registration. I mean, that's obviously a policy decision for the legislature that we're not going to weigh in on. But I just would I'm using this as an opportunity to explain that there's a problem here, and I don't think it's doing what it needs to be doing. So we need to make some changes regardless.
Okay,
Mr. Chair,
certainly.
a follow-up. So OPLC has a board, disciplinary board for those that you provide licensing or some kind of a oversight.
So the way it works for most bodies is that the office, we investigate. Those were the changes that were made last year. But ultimately, the allegations have to be brought to an adjudicatory body, which is typically a board. The only exception we have is ophthalmic dispensers. And in that case, the adjudication is done before the office, technically me, I've delegated that to a hearings officer, so it's just a hearings officer. So under this scenario, there is in statute a board, so we are required to bring those cases to the board. But because there's no board, it's a stopgap in the process. So I would propose, if you're going to keep the registration, eliminate the board, treat it as a pure registration, allow the office, our hearings examiner, to adjudicate these issues, because they don't require subject matter expertise. It's typically somebody diverted drugs or something like that. I mean, it's there's no expertise required. Like you shouldn't steal drugs when you're working in a facility. So so that would be my suggestion if you keep the registration.
So, Mr. Chair, sorry.
Yeah.
In that case, what you're saying is there's already a practice existing.
Correct.
For another group.
Yes.
Just remove the board, which is not in existence. It's not functioning. So you're not really damaging anything.
Correct.
And see how it goes. If it gets too much,
Right. And,
look at it.
and I mean, I guess, and where you've gotten complaints, aren't the employers aware of this and maybe doing something, or what's going on?
Well, we're not.
You know,
Well, until it's adjudicated, we are not allowed to share any information with anybody. It's considered confidential. So
you can't
it's
tell.
extremely frustrating. We're holding on to, I mean, we can share with law enforcement, which we do, but again, the standards are very different.
Yeah.
And even if it's criminal, they may not prosecute.
But if they start investigating the employer, I'd hope the employer would get rid of them. But
I would hope, but
They
then they
don't
go
have
to the next facility.
yeah.
Yeah.
I heard from,
Yeah.
Senator Sherman about the whole,
Right.
his whole
Is
thing.
this,
Can we add that language and make
Well,
to this
here-
bill?
We can. We'd have to get the language. And so the proposal would be what, to do what?
I think you need to consider whether you want to eliminate that registration completely. If you do, keep the bill as is. If you don't, my proposal would be to modify the bill to only eliminate the board and allow the office to adjudicate the disciplinary actions. And we could certainly get you that language.
that is line 22, 23, 24, repeal that.
Yeah, remove that and we can replace it with some other language if that's your desire.
Representative Gould and then Brown.
So,
Sorry.
if we remove this language and we keep it, no, if we keep this language, I'm dyslexic. Oh, I'm having
Oh, no, it's
such a hard
fine.
time with what
It's Friday.
what we're repealing and removing from what. But anyway, if we stop registering janitors as medical technicians, plain language, I can do that.
Mhm.
If we get a law passed so you don't have to do that, then we're really saying that hospitals and these other places will be monitoring the behavior of their employees on their.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Last question regarding this, the
Oh, and
postman.
we had a question pending
Sure.
from Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director, so I don't think in here it removes the requirement to register a medical tech.
Yeah, it does.
151 3D is verifying that they're registered, not saying they have to register. Am I wrong there?
Yeah, is there-
Well, it does, but if you look at the line above, it says RSA Chapter 328I, which is the entire registration process, is also proposed to be repealed.
Okay, 10-4, thank you.
And,
Question,
yeah,
so was this the situation at Portsmouth Hospital?
Exeter Hospital.
yeah.
So that was a little bit different. That individual was actually a radiologic technician, or which is actually what is regulated under the MIRT. The issue there, is that, I mean, having worked on those cases, registration would not have prevented that issue, because in those cases there was ample evidence on numerous occasions with the other states where they failed to report that information, and that was the issue in that circumstance. Now, if they, the question remains, who would they have reported the information to? At that point, our state didn't regulate it, so it would have been an independent private certification body that they would have reported it to, and or law enforcement. But that was actually a different profession. But that case was the genesis for this statutory change.
Even though this wouldn't have prevented. I'd like to make a motion which is we keep in the bill, which would mean to repeal from statute, page 6, lines 22 through 24, which would, okay, thank you. I think Representative Gould got in there, but, all right, all in favor? All opposed? Okay, fine. All right, and then going,
Before we move on, can we get clarification?
certainly,
Did you keep those lines in, or?
no, we kept them in the bill.
Okay.
We kept the repeals.
Got
At least that's what the subcommittee will propose to the full committee.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, and then, yeah, and oh, sir, you're gonna need to go to the mic if you're gonna ask a question. Somebody can give her a space.
Are you planning to keep the registration and eliminate the board?
No,
Okay.
what this is doing was getting rid of the whole thing.
Okay.
If, if somebody wanted to either put in a later bill or amend to something separately, a different version of it, then that could happen, but that's not what we just discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
10 says it's all repeal.
Yeah.
All the listed ones are to be repealed. So we are repealing the first three, 22, 23, 24.
And Representative Brown?
Yes, I believe the director said if we repeal the Board of Registration, that also includes repealing the registration.
Right.
Correct, because it's in the entire chapter.
Thank you.
All right, and then I have a question for OPLC about so there are the repeals in here related to medical imaging and radiation therapy.
Yes.
Which one of these, all of these repeals are related to that?
So that would be line 25 and 26. 25 is the entire chapter.
Yeah,
So as proposed, you would just be eliminating the licensure requirement. And then 26 is just the reference to a board in our statute 310, which would no longer exist if eliminated by 328J.
okay. And are all of the things in here related to 326B all related to LNAs? or-
Correct. Well, I would say I think it's worth going, unfortunately, line by line, because some of the changes are cleanup changes. You know, the ones regarding fees. The office has the authority to assess fees. So if the committee wanted to address the cleanup issues still in this bill, you would want to go line by line.
I'll go through it and get you that language by Monday.
Yeah, so there's, so I know there was a whole lot of concern about getting rid of the licensing of medical imaging and radiation therapy. And I know you may not be able to say or know, but what was the impetus behind that? Why was that viewed as unnecessary, if you know?
So my understanding
Yeah.
is that that was created around the time that medical technicians were created. And when looking, and again, I'm not taking a position,
Okay.
and there are others I think who can speak to exactly, the professional requirements. But they're not every modality is regulated in every state, and the gist of it, is a belief that regulation or public safety can be ensured through private certification. That's the gist.
Okay, and is there any current requirement for private certification, or would that have to be added if the state wanted to require it as opposed to the employer?
Well, I don't know. That would be interesting. I don't know how the state would mandate. I think you'd probably have to do it through facility regulations to say if you're going to be licensed, you have to ensure that somebody in this position has to be nationally certified. But under the previous model that New Hampshire had, which is no regulation, it was up to the employer.
So right now for medical imaging and radiation therapy, is that a license or a registration?
It's a license.
Okay. And what are the requirements? Like, is it basically they have to have this certification of some nationally recognized thing? Is there much more?
Typically, they have to have a national certification, yes.
But other than paying the fee and maybe a background check, there's,
The criminal history check is a
Right.
component as well, yeah.
right, but I mean, is there any other, is there a board that comes up with specific criteria and all
Yep.
that for this? Okay.
Yeah, and I do know we have a member of the advisory board in the audience.
Yeah, I was just trying to get the structure.
Yes.
Questions
Yes.
there. Yeah, before, we get too much further. So I just want to do a little overview of the rest of this, section 10. So we already, asked, Mr. Osterhaus to get us a list of the repeals that are related to the LNA, since we're not repealing the LNAs. He said he'd get us the ones that we need to remove out of here. You said there's some that are from, there are those, the three we dealt with, there's the two for the radiation thing. There's some you said are cleanup, and you're going to get me a list of which ones are those.
Correct.
And we can look at them. And then, are there any other repeals? I'd like to get through this first. And part of it is, I want to talk about a plan on how to go forward, and Rep. Brown needs to leave at 3:40. And that doesn't say we have to end then, but at least I want to see where we can get. So are any of the other repeals related to anything else?
No.
Okay. So here's what I'd like to propose to the subcommittee. The people are here from the radiation therapy and medical imaging, and we can hear from them. And I thank people for that, and I apologize. It's a big bill with a lot of pieces. My feeling, given, the testimony we heard, is that there's probably not an appetite to repeal this. And so what I'm thinking where we'll probably go, but it's going to be up to the subcommittee, is to, and we can hear from people first, although they may be happy just if we do this, but to repeal those two sections related to the, lines 25 and 26 on page 6. To repeal, I'm sorry, I should say that wrong. Language problem. We will remove them from the bill.
Thank you.
And so we will no longer repeal them. And that's what we're talking about doing. Yeah, and maybe we might make a motion, but I'd like to go through the rest of this. And then we're going to get from OPLC two lists. One is the repeals that are related to the LNA thing, because we're going to add those to things removed from the bill. And then there's the other ones that are related to cleanup. And so what I would propose is that, if they get that to us, let's say on Monday, that I schedule a 9 a.m. subcommittee meeting before a regular meeting, and all we'll have to do is, well, I'll look at the time. I might be able to get an actual. There's two things we need to do. One is we need to look over the cleanup ones to see if we have an issue with them, and vote on that. We can take. I think we'll take a vote before Rep. Brown has to leave on the medical imaging. I know when people, you can still ask questions of them if you want, but I think we heard enough. I've got enough documentation that I think that's what we're going to do. And then we'll meet. I'll talk to Carol about scheduling. We'll meet at 9 one morning and go over that, and then I'll have the list of things the things removed from the bill around LNA. We can vote on that. And then I'll have a list of stuff, and I'll write this out and organize it, and that I will then submit to OLS to get an amendment. And then I'll consult with Carol. The question is, do we need to meet again, which would again be a short meeting in the morning, to actually vote to accept this, or is it good enough that we voted our intent and then just deal with the real amendment before the full committee? Does that, anybody have an issue with any of that?
No.
I'd like to suggest we vote the intent with the understanding that we will see the actual written amendment
Certainly.
before it comes up in the committee.
Okay, well, in that case, we would meet as a subcommittee to vote on the amendment, which I'm fine with.
But can't we vote on it, and as long as when we look at it before the committee meeting, it looks like what we
Yeah,
left here thinking
yeah,
it
I
would
mean,
look like? We
when I get it out of OLS, I'm going to send it to everybody.
Yeah,
And I mean, for your help to look at it, it's like, did I miss something or did OLS miss something?
Right.
Which I've certainly seen happen. So I need your help on that. But the question, and then certainly if you let me know there's a problem, and that's a technical thing, something was left out,
Right.
then I can go back to OLS. But once we have one that we're happy with, then there's a process question, which my question is, what do we need to do? And the other question is, what do you folks want to do? You know, we could have then a short subcommittee meeting to formally vote to accept the actual amendment, which I'm okay with. Or if everybody's okay not doing that and we don't have to, then it'll depend on the timing and when we have to exec it and all that. So, I mean, I'm flexible on all that, but
so
I just want to make sure everybody is happy with the end result
trying to be clear, I'd be happier to vote now. and
on the
then
medical imaging.
On the whole.
Well, we
concept
did it in,
then through.
we did it in pieces.
Right, and so I'd be happy to leave here with an overall vote.
Okay.
So we don't have to meet again on it, as long as, if when we get it.
Here's the-
somehow it doesn't look
Here's the
like-
problem with
Excuse
that.
me, Representative,
Yeah.
put your microphone on
Oh,
for the.
exactly.
Sorry.
Well, here's the problem with that.
Yeah.
The problem is that there are some of the repeals that are not related to anything we've discussed and
Mhm.
voted on, but are related to some general OPLC cleanup. Now, sometimes you have things that are called cleanup and they actually have real effects that maybe we want to consider. And so I wouldn't feel comfortable. I wouldn't feel comfortable.
Okay,
So I'd want us to at least meet, and when we have the list, we'll just have some list, hopefully small, of these items in section
Yeah.
10 that we need to review. And if we're comfortable with all of them, fine, and then we'll vote to accept them.
okay.
But that's the only part we won't have voted on. So I'd like to make a motion right now that we remove from the bill, page 6, lines 25 and 26, which are the ones related to medical imaging and radiation therapy. And if I can get it, actually, I'd like to ask someone to make that motion, reasons why.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
That means we are not addressing that right now.
Actually, we, and Bailey, we
You're not-
are addressing it in the sense we're saying we're going to take it out of the bill, and therefore we will leave that licensing in place. So yeah, we are dealing with it.
And
You're
Mr.
not
Chair,
repealing.
What? Yeah. Representative Gould.
I'm just hoping that we can
I'll be
hear
gl-
from,
I'll be glad, because this isn't final, and, you know, we're going to take another vote, and so,
Yeah.
and people came up here.
yeah, can they
But I
just?
want to
nod
accommodate, I
their
want to
heads?
I don't want to have another full meeting.
Right,
And I'd like to accommodate Representative Brown. I think
Yes.
we can. I mean,
Yes.
if we couldn't, we couldn't.
yes.
All right. So any further discussion on this motion?
My question is, can we just have them nod their heads if they like this?
Is there anybody here who is opposed to leaving that licensing in here?
Yay, thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, Mr. Chair.
The good point. That's a good idea. All right. Yeah, the
Yes.
second was Representative Bailey. Okay, I'm going to go person by person because I'm going to vote no on this, although, which
Okay.
is fine. I'm
Yeah.
going to lose. I'm okay with that. So, Representative Manchaputi, to leave it in. Oh, I'll be,
Yeah, well,
I mean, if you're not ready and you want more things, I'm
Yeah.
fine. I mean, we don't have to vote right now. I don't want to push
They will
people.
still be licensed if you vote yes.
Okay. Okay, Representative Gould.
Yes.
Representative Bailey. Okay, that's a yes, Bailey. Representative Brown. Brown is a yes. I'm going to be a no, and that's fine. Not the first time I've lost a vote.
And that's the only two?
Those are the only two. So,
Lines, I mean.
as we've dealt with the three above it on the medical technician registration, and we still have to get details on which ones we need to remove from the bill related to, because we left LNAs in, licensing, and then what are the ones that we need to actually look at because they're for cleanup.
A quick question about
Certainly.
OPLC.
Yeah.
Which is the board under which this medical imaging and radiation therapy
What?
comes
Oh.
under?
Somebody has a question?
Sorry, you
If you can
have a
come up,
board.
oh, wait,
Oh,
well, yeah, what's your, let me,
I said, I want to know if they have a board, like the other one, they didn't have a board that was functioning.
okay, Executive Director.
Yeah, we have a functioning board. This board is an advisory board, which is a little bit different, but they're fully functioning and provide the necessary guidance and show up and do what they need to do.
Okay, thank you. Whoever had a question, please come to the mic, introduce yourself, and ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom Praisall from Demers and Praisall. I represent the New Hampshire Society for Radiologic Technologists.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring to your attention that if you were going to remove the repeals in Section 10, you might want to address the cross out in Section 9.
Actually, and that's the only thing in Section 9. So let's reopen that motion if the maker and the second are okay. And we will include in that removing all of Section 9. I think,
That's the
well, by
only
removing,
ones.
I'm sorry, removing Section 9 from the bill, we'll leave statute unchanged.
Right.
Which will just take out those two strikeouts.
I'm sorry, Representative.
I'm-
Section 9 also includes the medical technicians. So I think
Ah.
you still would have to.
Okay, which one is which?
3, I think I is medical technicians and
Okay.
J is medical imaging.
Okay, so
Okay, so
let me
the-
change it. So this would also be to remove,
RSA 328-J
We-
from section 9 in the bill.
and leave in,
Right.
and leave
Well, but if my motion is just on
on pulling that,
Radiation.
on removing that,
from the repeal,
Early medical
list.
right. If we, we're adding to the motion to remove 328I
J-
from Section 9, and that's the one around radiation.
J, right?
which-
Is radiation?
All right, Jay. So we,
Jay.
sorry, I got my notes here wrong. I'm not reading my own notes
The
wrong.
dyslexic one had it right?
We did. So we're going to remove we're going to remove the removal of the reference to 328J from Section 9.
Yay!
Another one,
Where?
which is 310:2.
What page and
The next
line?
one that is 5.
I'm sorry, page,
926.
oh, page 5?
No, page 6.
Yep, line,
4 and 5
line 4 and 5?
are related to imaging technology.
No, which, I'm confused. We're on
I
page
know.
6.
925 and 26.
That's what I
Two
needed.
different RSAs.
She needs Roman numerals for.
No, that's.
25 and
oh.
26, that's what the motion is on.
No, you just said 328-J.
Right, we're adding that to
Yeah.
the motion but to
That's the-
We're-
remove.
We're
That's the
voting
strikeout
to,
in
we're
section
voting
Yeah.
to remove from the bill, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep,
The repeal of 328J and
Yep.
the repeal of 310 to Roman
Exactly.
2D.
That was my
correct.
mistake.
And we're removing
And-
from the bill the removal of 328J on line 18.
Yes,
Which refers to the radio.
So,
yes, we are.
so
That was the
am
original
I correct
motion.
that the
Yep.
Representative Gould, the maker of the motion,
Yep.
Representative Bailey, the second, agree with that change? And are any of the
Yes.
votes different? Everybody's yes except me, is that?
Well, I'm fine with it.
Oh, yes, okay. And, we can still talk to people we want, but, he's saying we don't need to. So I'm going to close the hearing. I want to thank everyone in this committee for working great together on this complicated mess. And all the people who went to the trouble of driving up through whatever it is. Now, I hope it's not ice.
I know.
To come and help us with this. And thank you. And yeah, subcommittees, if it works, I'll run it less formally, but with somewhat under control. All right.
Gives me a chance to ask all the questions.
Yeah, I know.
Not irritated. Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. He sent me a note when he had to leave, so I was trying to at least get the main work done. Thank you very much. And everybody have a safe drive back, please. We don't want to lose anybody. I saw your picture. I was telling you, I've got a friend of mine, Amy Day, who also raised, and so I purchased